I'm leveling up my stats in Marvel. Welcome back, brave explorers of impossible worlds. We are excited to have you here to continue this odyssey together. Before we continue, everything you'll hear is pure fiction, so please don't try to replicate combat techniques at home. This wonderful story and all its rights belong to its brilliant original author. We are only the messengers of entertainment. Want another dose of adventure? Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single chapter, and if you can't wait, our Patreon has exclusive surprises you'll love. Chapter 226, to save or not to save? That is the question. News of the alien invasion and the fall of Washington spread across the internet at breakneck speed. Initially, people thought it was fake news spread by unscrupulous media, until videos surfaced showing the Dark Elf flagship unleashing a barrage of artillery fire, utterly destroying the city. Then, people thought it was a movie trailer, until official media from various countries stepped in, confirming the news and urging the public to seek refuge in underground bunkers or evacuate on their own. At Avengers Tower, those who learned of the fall of Washington quickly arrived in the city via a portal to provide support. Tony Stark's suit's built-in earpiece crackled with Jarvis's voice. "Sir, Nick Fury has sent a message, marked extremely urgent." Tony Stark glanced at it and immediately informed the other personnel. "Don't rush to Washington, Tony. If you've already departed, evacuate immediately. The military has gone mad, firing missiles at the alien fleet over Washington like crazy. Many of them are nuclear bombs accumulated from the last century." The group's faces paled in horror, and they involuntarily stopped in their tracks. "To eliminate invaders, drop a nuclear bomb on your own capital? Insane, absolutely insane," Loki exclaimed dramatically. Thor, though silent, nodded in agreement. Little did they know that in another timeline, they had done something far more insane. To stop Hela, they resurrected the fire giant Surtur, instigating Ragnarok and destroying Asgard. Natasha, the military is insane. Don't they know that once a nuclear bomb explodes, Washington, D.C. and the surrounding area will be a wasteland for decades, even centuries? The Pentagon across the street will have to relocate. Gwen couldn't help but say, "The most urgent thing is what will happen to the people of Washington? If a nuclear bomb explodes over Washington, D.C., even if they survive the shockwave and heat radiation, they'll likely be exposed to radiation." Gwen, Ultron, can you estimate the number of survivors in Washington, D.C.? After scanning the battlefield, Ultron concluded, when the alien warships arrived in Washington, D.C., the population was approximately 950,000. The bombing primarily targeted buildings, with an estimated 150,000 direct deaths. However, most survivors are buried under the rubble, and without timely treatment, the casualty count will rise sharply. Wanda, can we intercept the missile? Use a portal spell to teleport it away. No, the missile is too fast, the risk is too great. Besides, not all of us can fly. Tony Stark rejected Wanda's proposal and quickly made a decision. Move. Those who know teleportation magic, coordinate with those who don't, save as many people as you can, okay? At Tony Stark's command, the Asgardians, the Avengers, Gwen, Aaron, Wanda, and Gaia all sprang into action. Under Ultron's plan, they divided into different areas, racing against time to dig through the boulders, rescue the buried civilians, and teleport them away. While they were moving, countless missiles were streaking across the sky, heading towards them. If a nuclear bomb exploded over Washington, D.C., they would be completely exposed to the shockwave, heat radiation, light radiation, and nuclear radiation. "Russell, they are your friends, aren't you going to help?" the observer asked. "People won't be grateful for how many people they saved, they'll only resent who they didn't save." On the hill, Russell sipped a glass of lemonade, pointing in the direction of Washington, D.C., gesturing dramatically. "Observer, do you see that? The energy of resentment is accumulating, while the energy of gratitude is scarce. Look, there's someone over there who's just been rescued and is already complaining about why Gwen didn't save him first." The observer simply smiled, added 2 more lemon slices to Russell's glass of water. "Most beings in the universe are like this, he's long been used to it. Isn't Russell going to intervene? That's a real pity," the observer sighed. Russell glanced at the observer. This big-headed doll doesn't know what he's lamenting about. He clearly has the ability to save these people. As if hearing Russell's thoughts, the observer explained, the observer race has sworn not to interfere in the affairs of the universe, not wanting to affect the development of later civilizations. But these people, whether they live or die, will have little impact on the development of civilization. Following my heart, I still hope they can live. But, the observer pointed to the Allied fleet of the 4 great nations above Washington, D.C. signaling for him to intervene and rescue these people would mislead the Allied forces of the 4 great nations into believing he was a member of Earth, affecting their assessment of Earth's combat capabilities. This violated the observer's principles. Russell lowered his head and took another sip of lemonade. He would intervene, but not now. On the horizon, several missiles streaked across the sky, heading towards the Dark Elf fleet. At speeds of several Mach, they were invisible to the naked eye. Their location could only be determined by the long contrails left behind them. Retreat. Everyone retreat, Maria Hill's voice rang in the earpieces of all the combat personnel. You go first, I can still save a few more people. I have spider sense, I'll teleport away if there's danger, Gwen said firmly. As the others teleported away one after another, she frantically moved boulders, trying to save a few more people. I have spider sense too. Seeing this, Eileen wanted to join in. However, before Eileen could act, Tony Stark grabbed her, pulling her and causing her to stumble. Eileen, come back. You don't even know teleportation magic, what are you doing here? Tony Stark shoved Eileen away, teleporting her away. Gwen, the missile is expected to hit the alien fleet and explode in 1 minute. Keep an eye on the time. After giving this instruction, Tony Stark also teleported away. At this moment, only Gwen and Thor were still actively rescuing people in the ruins. Thor said that the shockwave, heat radiation, light radiation, and nuclear radiation from a mere nuclear explosion were nothing more than a shower. As Tony Stark and the others left, the crowd in the ruins seemed to understand something. Some struggled and shouted, hoping to be rescued first. Some bowed their heads and silently mourned. Although their god did not exist and could not hear the prayers, they undoubtedly had more composure than the panicked crowd. A few others urged Gwen and Thor to leave quickly, even though they had not yet been rescued. Boom. 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 A black arc of electricity flashed, and the 6 missiles that arrived first were intercepted by the Dark Elf fleet and exploded immediately. Gwen's spider senses. Chapter 227 Great Teleportation Technique. In the blinding light of the missile explosion, a scene of devastation and suffering was frozen in time. Anxiety, tension, fear, worry, restlessness, sadness, complaints, helplessness, frustration, despair, a complex mix of emotions, difficult to articulate, appeared on people's faces amidst the disaster. Observer, there's only one kind of person who doesn't deserve saving, Russell said, downing his lemonade in one gulp on the hill, turning the glass upside down, and standing up. Those are the ungrateful. They often don't hate the enemy, but rather resent the heroes who failed to save them. Above the ruins of Washington, D.C., the shockwave and heat radiation from the missile explosion spread in all directions. On the ground, the expressions on the faces of the crowd remained frozen. The next instant, a silver face appeared above the clouds, eyes downcast, filled with compassion. A crystalline white beam of light descended from the sky, illuminating a figure shouting for Saul and Gwen to leave quickly. The white beam flashed for a moment, and the figure soared into the sky along with it, disappearing into the ruins. Immediately afterward, white beams of light rained down, and the number of people dwindled. During this process, the shockwaves and heat radiation from the missile explosions in the sky crawled slowly towards the ground like turtles. I knew Russell wouldn't stand idly by. He likes to act like the protagonist in those third-rate movies, stories, and novels, appearing at the last minute to turn the tide, Tony Stark rumbled. His fist, which he subtly loosened, betrayed his insincerity. Oh, Gwen, do you know what kind of spell this is? On the ruins, Thor stopped his rescue efforts. After calming down, he asked Gwen. Gwen shook her head, opened a portal, and left. I don't know. Let's go, leave the rest to Russell, only he could do something like this. I really want to know where his limits are. In the Skyfire Command Center, Nick Fury watched the scene on the screen suddenly slowing down, and couldn't help but think of that night. The night he first fought alongside Russell against the vampires. If history could be rewritten, he would definitely do everything in his power to recruit Russell. Truly worthy of being a sorcerer capable of defeating a cosmic overlord. His skill is divine. Commanders from various countries' supernatural bureaus, who also witnessed this scene, exclaimed in amazement. The more information they gleaned from Thanos' Black Order warship, the more incredible it seemed. How could such a small planet like Earth produce someone capable of traversing the universe, invincible and unstoppable. By the time the shockwave and heat radiation reached the ground, most of the people in the ruins had been wiped out, leaving only a small group. Their faces displayed complex emotions, but one emotion was universally acknowledged: resentment. Resentment that the superheroes hadn't prioritized their rescue. The shockwave swept through, sending these people flying like rag dolls. Heat radiation followed, burning their skin and carbonizing their flesh. Finally, came the deafening roar. Rumble. The roar shattered this apocalyptic scene, awakening everyone. Those who survived, outside the missile's kill radius, scrambled for cover, simultaneously emitting cries of agony, shouts of anger, and expressions of resentment. God, save us, what kind of God are you? Why have you abandoned us, if you are a god? I curse you to fall into hell. Boom. 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 In the sky, as the flow of time in this area resumed, dozens of missiles suddenly intruded. The Dark Elf fleet methodically intercepted the missiles from all directions. Whether it was conventional missiles below the speed of sound, surface-to-air missiles at several Mach, or hypersonic missiles at over Mach 20, not a single missile could break through the Dark Elf fleet's interception and hit the warships. They were all destroyed in mid-air. Their destructive power could only be released onto the ground, making the ruins of Washington, D.C. even more devastated. These outdated missiles simply cannot break through the alien fleet's interception, Nick Fury said in the military base. Nobody knows how long these alien warships will stay in place. We must take new measures as soon as possible. Ross, Director Fury, get straight to the point. Nick Fury, request the Avengers' assistance. The data shows that Tony Stark in the Avengers possesses a teleportation spell. We can get him to cooperate and try to teleport missiles directly into the alien warships. Ross, okay. Director Fury, go contact Tony Stark. Tell him that as long as he cooperates, we won't hold the Avengers responsible for violating the Superhero Registration Act and illegally using supernatural powers. Nick Fury's face darkened, and he cursed, "Fuck you. Ross, are you kidding me? What kind of Superhero Registration Act is this? If it weren't for this fucking law, my Avengers would still be around, and we wouldn't be in this situation where Washington, D.C. was suddenly attacked and destroyed, and we couldn't do anything about it, just watching the enemy swagger around." Ross, Director Fury, watch your language. Nick Fury, I'm watching you. Okay, General Ross. Nick Fury took a deep breath, dialed Tony Stark's number, and put it on speakerphone. Immediately afterward, Tony Stark, upon hearing General Ross's conditions, berated Ross on Nick Fury's behalf. Ultimately, the two sides reached a friendly, mutually beneficial agreement. Boom. With a loud explosion, a cross-shaped Dark Elf warship was destroyed. What happened? How could a missile penetrate our interception on such a backward planet? And what about the energy shields on the various warships? Why weren't they activated? In the Joint Command Center of the four nations, the Dark Elf commander, upon receiving news of the damaged warship, questioned his subordinates. Reporting, "Commander, all energy shields are activated." Then why? Boom. Before the Dark Elf commander could finish speaking, another roar rang out. Found it. The explosion originated inside the ship. Could someone have sent a missile inside the ship? Recalling the scene of someone opening a portal to rescue people on the ground, the Dark Elf commander had a flash of inspiration. Quick! All warships, move! Don't stay still. At the command, the warships of the four allied nations sprang into action, attempting to disperse. At that moment, several more missiles were transmitted through the portal. However, once the warships were in motion, the missiles failed to accurately reach the ships, exploding only at close range outside. Although the shockwaves from the explosions caused ripples in the warship's energy barriers, nothing more was achieved. Chapter 228. The battle escalates to full throttle. In the command center of the four great nations' allied forces, the Dark Elf commander issued the order, disperse your warships and target the nation's transportation, communication, energy, and water infrastructure. Destroy the most powerful nation on this planet within 3 days. Let the Midgards know the consequences of resisting us. After assigning the mission, the Dark Elf commander looked at the cursed warrior Cursor, seeking his opinion. Cursor nodded, his expression grave. Do it that way. Also, add one more thing. Find the owner of the face that just appeared in the clouds, and the warriors involved in the rescue on the ground. Once we deal with them, the remaining Midgards pose no threat to us. Their technological level and general quality are quite average. Yes, Commander Cursor, After the Dark Elf commander accepted the order and went to make the arrangements, the cursed warrior Cursor continued to gaze at the sky, unable to recover for a long time. Midgard actually has such a powerful mage. Fortunately, he made a grave mistake to save these mortals. Delaying the time in such a large area and teleporting hundreds of thousands of people away at once, his magic power is probably exhausted. Otherwise, the cursed warrior withdrew his gaze from the sky and looked down at the ruins. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left a portion here. If he hadn't, he wouldn't have left. It's truly unexpected that simply being too lazy to deal with the insects below would have yielded such an unexpected gain, forcing a powerful mage to overdraw his magic power and lose his fighting ability. Thinking of this, the cursed warrior couldn't help but snort softly. In the U.S. Command Center, a technician summarized the intelligence. The alien warships have dispersed. Radar shows their targets are various infrastructure sites across our country. Ross was overjoyed upon hearing this and immediately decided, send out the entire Air Force to take them down one by one. Nick Fury objected, no, apart from our new generation fighters, our other fighters are technologically inferior to theirs, and the performance in all aspects is far inferior. Sending them into battle will only make them sitting ducks. Ross, Director Fury, get your position straight. I am the supreme commander of this operation. Nick Fury, Ross, your flawed decision will only lead to disastrous defeat. Seeing Nick Fury repeatedly arguing with him, Ross no longer gave him any face. In Ross's view, if it weren't for the Sky Sword Bureau's inadequate intelligence work, allowing the alien warships to easily breach Earth's outer space defenses and enter the homeland, the current situation wouldn't be so passive. Ross, guards, Director Fury is tired, take him to rest. Unable to persuade Ross, Nick Fury had no choice but to turn to Tony Stark for help again. And he revealed to Tony Stark the wealth he had painstakingly accumulated, 2 aircraft carriers using Dark Order technology and a new generation fighter jet force, that he had kept hidden from everyone. Stark, the aliens are targeting infrastructure. If they succeed, this country is finished. Understood, Tony Stark nodded. The fall of the capital and the war with aliens on home soil had severely damaged the United States' prestige. If its infrastructure suffered further damage, its national strength would plummet. In the subsequent arms race and space technology race, it would fall far behind the other 2 superpowers. However, Tony Stark looked at his comrades. Steve Rogers, after 70 years in slumber, didn't approve of the current U.S. government. Dr. Banner, he still had a score to settle with the U.S. military. Natasha Romanoff, she was Russian. Thor and Loki, they were Asgardians. Gwen and Aaron, they were from New York, but Gwen wasn't from this universe either. Wanda and Pietro were Sokovians from Eastern Europe. Gaia wasn't even from Earth, she was a Skrull. After surveying the scene, Tony Stark said, "Gentlemen, I have good news. The 4 great nations' warships are targeting infrastructure, not city clusters. We can fight freely without worrying about friendly fire. We'll eliminate the scattered alien warships first, then concentrate our forces to attack the flagship." Thor narrowed his eyes, looking at the Dark Elf flagship rapidly moving overhead, and said, "Tony, no need for that. Once it's farther away, I can take it down by myself." Tony Stark, are you sure? Thor, yes, alright, then the enemy flagship is yours. Thor, Tony Stark patted Thor on the shoulder. He trusted Thor's abilities and didn't want to dampen his enthusiasm. Ultron, command the Iron Legion, and coordinate with man Nick Fury's fighter squadron to snipe the enemy's scattered aircraft. Everyone else, prepare to assist Thor in attacking the enemy commander after he shoots down the flagship. Okay, everyone responded in unison, agreeing to Tony Stark's arrangement. On the hill, Russell had just returned and sat down when the observer poured him another glass of lemonade. "Russell, this new observer is too polite. The lemonade is too sour, have something else." Russell took out 2 more glasses and a bottle of coconut juice, filling them for himself and the observer. The observer took them, expressionlessly taking a sip. "Russell, you saved some people, but not others. Some people will hate you." Russell smiled, "I know that. However, there are great scholars to defend me. Besides, doing so can alleviate the public pressure on others, especially Gwen Stranger." "True," the observer nodded, quickly finding examples in the database. In this Marvel universe where gods truly exist, whether in the primitive, savage era or the information age of rapid technological advancement, where technology borders on the miraculous, gods stand atop the pinnacle of faith, high and mighty. Every action of a god is automatically embellished by believers. In Thor, Love and Thunder, the God-Slayer goal, enduring hunger and suffering, even witnessing his daughter die of thirst before his eyes, never doubted his faith in Lap. It wasn't until Lap himself told him that their suffering was the price for Lap's victory over the master of the Black Death Sword that Gaul's faith crumbled, leading him to take up the Black Death Sword and become the God-Slayer. So, those who do nothing, take no action, yet love to criticize warriors who haven't performed perfectly. They should be careful. Russell waved his hand, and a beam of white energy shot into the sky, obliterating an unfortunate dark elf fighter jet flying in their direction. Will their actions anger the true gods, making them the Forsaken? When disaster strikes, others are saved, but they are left only to face despair and fall into the abyss. Chapter 229 Double the Power of Thor. Russell, you're becoming more and more like a god, the observer said. His tone remained calm, and Russell couldn't discern any deeper meaning, taking it literally. Russell, observer, you know I'm only a few decades old, my lifespan far shorter than yours. With your race's understanding of the universe, translate for me, what is a god? Observer, a god is a god. Russell, be specific. Seeing the light emanating from Russell's right hand, the observer looked up at the sky. The sky was cloudless, a clear blue. Most importantly, there were no dark elf fighters. They were coming for him. Observer, you are a god. Russell nodded, the light in his hand fading, and refilled the observer's coconut juice. What did he mean by becoming more and more like a god? He already was. The observer took another sip of coconut juice to calm his nerves, then pointed to the dark elf flagship that had left the city cluster in the distance and said, Russell, Thor is about to make his move. In the distance, Thor, using the ground structures as cover, quietly followed the dark elf flagship heading into the distance. Behind him, Gwen and the others watched from afar. They would immediately teleport to support Thor once he succeeded. Breaking news, after calculations, shooting down the dark elf flagship here will not affect the nearby cities. Thor, running on the ground, heard Ultron's voice through his earpiece and silently nodded. Divine power surged within him, lightning coursing through his body. His eyes turned silver white, and his hair crackled with electricity. Zzz crack. A crackling sound came from the earpiece, which burned out. The next instant, a thunderclap erupted from the ground, lightning ripped through the clouds, and struck the dark elf flagship. On the ground, Thor gathered power in his feet, then slammed his foot down, transforming into a silver lightning bolt that shot up into the air, heading straight for the dark elf flagship. Boom, a bolt of lightning struck from the sky, and Thor rose from the ground. Almost simultaneously, both struck the dark elf flagship. Terrifying lightning power erupted, instantly electrifying the flagship's surface. The current seeped into the flagship's metal hull, deck, and ground, ravaging the entire vessel from the outside in. Boom. Snap. 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 First, explosions occurred at the points where the lightning struck and Thor hit, then vital instruments throughout the dark elf flagship detonated. With a single blow, the dark elf flagship lost power, billowing black smoke, and plummeted helplessly to the ground. Boom. The dark elf flagship crashed to the ground, exploding in flames. Accompanying the flames, a terrifying shockwave swept out, destroying an entire forest. Dense trees were instantly snapped in half. Fallen leaves ignited, carrying the flames even further. As the smoke cleared, looking at the devastation in the distance, Gwen asked, "Do we no longer need your help?" "Probably." Thor clapped his hands and stepped out from behind the group. He had left through a portal before the dark elf flagship crashed. Even with his thick skin, he didn't want to withstand such a terrifying explosion head-on. "Watch out!" Gwen raised her hand, shooting a web from her wrist's web shooter, catching a steel plate that suddenly shot out from the explosion's epicenter, and tossing it aside. There are still people inside. Without Gwen needing to say more, the group realized there were still people inside, and they all went on alert, entering battle mode. "Thor, Odin's son, so you're here." No wonder those who escaped from Asgard came to Midgard specifically for this. The cursed warrior Kurs stepped forward. According to the law of no harm from smoke, he appeared unharmed. "Who are you? Since you know my name, why don't you surrender now?" Thor stepped forward and asked. "Cursed warrior, Kurs." Thor's answer was not only a voice, but also the cursed warrior Kurs's fist. In an instant, the cursed warrior Kurs transformed from stillness to motion, charging towards Thor like a black flash. His feet slammed into the ground, causing it to tremble. His powerful body tore through the air currents becoming blades that ripped apart the swirling leaves. Black light flashed on his fists, terrifying energy gathering within them. Kurz's speed caught Thor off guard. Caught off guard, Thor could only raise his arm to block Kurz's powerful punch. Boom! Kurz's fist struck Thor's arm, producing a deafening clang like metal clashing. Thor was sent flying backward, traveling dozens of meters, crashing through over a dozen ancient trees before landing. After landing, he tumbled several times before regaining his footing. What terrifying power! Gwen and the others were shocked, momentarily stunned. They hadn't expected this self-proclaimed cursed warrior curse to possess such astonishing strength. After their initial surprise, they recovered. Gwen leaped and darted, constantly shooting out spider silk that entangled the cursed warrior curse, restricting his movements. Dr. Banner, his face contorted in a grotesque expression, transformed into the Hulk and seized the opportunity to deliver a powerful punch, striking Kurz in the chin. Hulk, invincible, bang! The same scene played out again, only this time, instead of Thor, Kurz was sent flying. Shatter the darkness with thunder, Thor leaped into the air, unleashing a surge of lightning that drew lightning from the clouds, slamming it towards the spot where Kurz had fallen. With a deafening boom, lightning struck down from the sky. A silver ball of lightning appeared where Kurz had been. In the center of this terrifying lightning power, Kurz's body glowed with black light as he caught Thor's punch with his arm. Thor? Nothing special, Kurz swung his arm, sending Thor flying. This time, Thor did several backflips in mid-air before landing smoothly. Thor, you need to cooperate with us, Gwen said. If Thor continued to use his lightning powers, they wouldn't be able to get close enough to help. Hulk, invincible. Just as Gwen was about to renegotiate their battle plan with Thor, Hulk had already taken the lead, running towards the cursed warrior Cursor. Boom! This time, the cursed warrior Cursor wasn't bound by Gwen's spider silk and freed his hand to clash with Hulk's fist. Although Cursor's fist was far smaller than Hulk's, the power they unleashed was evenly matched, and both were knocked back half a step. Then, another punch was thrown out. This time, their heavy punches crossed and both hit each other. Both of them were sent flying like arrows, blown far away by each other's powerful punches. Shatter the darkness with lightning, Thor leaped up again, accompanied by lightning and thunder, attacking the cursed warrior Cursor. Gwen sighed and facepalmed. What kind of people are these? Can't they even think straight? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230 Let that mage come out. You'll get used to it. That's just how Thor is. He's fine most of the time, but once he starts fighting, well, Loki tried to comfort Gwen, but before he could finish, Thor, who had just knocked him away again, slammed into him and sent them flying back, crashing through a dozen trees before crashing heavily to the ground. They skipped across the water, creating several large craters. Damn Thor, did you do that on purpose? Loki shoved Thor aside, annoyed. He had been behind Thor the whole time, unlucky enough to be Thor's human cushion, taking most of the impact for him. Loki wasn't as tough as Thor, who had been wearing layers of armor since childhood and could withstand beatings without flinching. He just felt a tightness in his chest. On the other side, as soon as the cursed warrior Kurzel knocked Thor away, the Hulk seamlessly stepped aside, facing Kurzel head-on. Gwen and Wanda took the opportunity to launch sneak attacks from the sidelines. Gwen continued to leap and jump, using her webs to bind Kurzel's wrists, elbows, and other joints, thus restricting him. Every now and then, they would attack Kurzel from the rear and flanks, distracting him and preventing him from concentrating all his strength to fight Hulk. Wanda, on the other hand, used the prince's strategy, firing multiple energy projectiles at Kurzel in succession. The crimson energy orbs struck Kurzel, causing him to stagger. However, despite Wanda's relentless bombardment, Kurzel showed no signs of weakness. For a time, Hulk, Gwen, and Wanda were relentlessly beating Kurzel, leaving no room for anyone else to intervene. Pietro, the war correspondent Maximov, asked, "So, what are we here for?" Steve Rogers, shield in hand, remained vigilant. "We can provide cover for them, but," Pietro shrugged, "I want to do more." The next moment, Pietro's figure flickered. When Pietro's figure returned to focus, Blood was dripping from the vibranium dagger in his hand. In a split second, he was behind Kuzul and stabbed him 13 times in the waist within 35 milliseconds. HMPH, Kuzul let out a muffled groan, the force dissipating as he involuntarily knelt on one knee. Kuzul's defense was extremely effective against blunt force, but against sharp weapons, it was almost ineffective. The Hulk seized the opportunity, unleashing a barrage of wild punches that rained down on Kuzul's face. Kuzul managed to raise one arm to parry, but was still knocked to the ground by the Hulk. After knocking Kuzul to the ground, the Hulk straddled him, launching a barrage of punches at Kuzul's head. Bang! 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 The Hulk's heavy punches sent terrifying force coursing through Kuzul's body into the ground. The earth trembled, dust billowed, and a deep crater formed beneath Kuzul's body, its area continuously expanding. Until it hit the rock below, it shook and cracked the rock. In a daze, Kuzul seemed to remember something. Back then, he was a handsome dark elf with flowing white hair, not the hideous cursed warrior he was now. Thud! Hulk's fist came down, caught by Kuzul's hand. Immediately afterward, Kuzul pushed off with both feet, deliberately shattering the rock below, using the momentum to break free from Hulk's grasp. Rumble, in the dust, Hulk pursued relentlessly. Kuzul ducked and retreated, dodging Hulk's left hook, right hook, and rear hook, then retaliating with a small combo. A right straight punch landed on Hulk's neck, followed by a left punch to his throat. Hulk cried out in pain, dizzy and unable to stop himself from retreating. Kuzul circled around to Hulk's side, then delivered a powerful punch to Hulk's ribs. Finally, he finished off Hulk with an uppercut, sending him flying. Hulk seemed to lose consciousness mid-air, crashing helplessly to the ground. Seeing this, Gwen shot out a web to pull Hulk out of the battle. "I am Argalim, the strongest warrior of Svartalfheim," Kuzul roared, venting his frustration at being suppressed. Looking around and seeing that Gwen and Wanda had also distanced themselves, Kuzul became even more arrogant. "You are no match for me, let that mage come out." Swoosh! "Are you talking about me, you big oaf?" A blade pierced through Kuzul's chest from behind, and Loki's voice rang out at the same time. Loki proved with his actions that when it came to stabbing someone in the kidneys, he was the master. Damn it! Kuzul swung a punch at Loki behind him, but Kuzul's arm passed right through Loki's body, hitting nothing. Undoubtedly, this was just an illusion. Loki's real body had already quietly hidden to the side. Thor, battle requires more than just brute force, it requires wisdom. Sure enough, Loki's voice rang out from another direction, and he emerged from behind a tree, holding a remote control button. Kuzul suddenly felt a sense of danger approaching, looking down at the blade piercing his chest, its tip stained with his blood. In the reflection of the blood, flashes of yellow light flickered. "To die at the hands of the great god of mischief is your honor. Warrior of Svartalfheim, Argalim," Loki said softly, decisively pressing the button. Bang! The weapon embedded in Kuzul's chest exploded instantly, tearing his body apart from the inside. Immediately afterward, a small spatial rift appeared at the center of the explosion, sucking in the energy dissipated from the blast along with Kuzul. "I never expected Loki to defeat this monster in the end. He truly lives up to his reputation as my brother." Loki was very calm, constantly observing the cursed warrior Kuzul's weaknesses. After Pietro made his move, he astutely discovered Kuzul's flaw. Although Kuzul has extremely strong defense against blunt weapons and is very resilient, surviving being surrounded and beaten by many without much injury, Kuzul was easily pierced by sharp weapons, showing that his internal defenses are weak. Therefore, Loki targeted Kuzul's weakness precisely, accurately seizing upon it to deliver a fatal blow. On the hilltop, Russell finished eating sunflower seeds and analyzed the situation. Compared to others, the others lack combat experience considerably. Although Thor awakened the power of Thor after losing Mjolnir, his combat strength decreased significantly in the short term. He's not quite adapted yet, neither in terms of attack power nor fighting style, the observer asked. "Russell, are you worried that Thor's decreased strength will affect the upcoming battle against the allied forces of the four great realms?" Russell nodded, a half-smile playing on his lips. "Observer, can you tell me if there's an ancient god or other powerful being standing behind the allied forces of the four great realms?" The observer smiled. "Russell, you know. The observer doesn't interfere in any affairs of the universe." "I can't tell you." Russell smiled as well. Chapter 231. Sitting in a row, sharing the fruit. Although the observer said nothing, his attitude sometimes revealed a lot. Was there some ancient god or other unknown powerful being hiding behind the alliance of the four great nations? That needed careful planning. Having made up his mind, Russell cleared away the food and drinks on the table and walked towards Gwen and the others. With one step, a shimmering white light flashed, a portal opened, and he arrived beside Gwen and the others. Oh, the battle is over? What happened after Hulk fainted? Dr. Banner slowly woke up, took the clothes Steve Rogers handed him and put them on, asking. Steve Rogers pointed to Loki, who was being held tightly by Thor and unable to break free. Loki discovered the weakness of the cursed warrior Kurzel and killed him using a special artifact. Dr. Banner, is that so? Now that we're done here, should we go help Tony? No need. Just then, Russell stepped out of the portal. Tony and Ultron, working together with the Iron Legion, have a clear advantage in the battle against the Four Nations fighters, so we don't need to help for now. Besides, you can't help with this kind of high-speed aerial combat, Steve Rogers asked. Then is there anything we can do now? The others' attention was also drawn to this. Russell, Earth isn't the main battlefield, the main battlefield is Asgard. The outcome of the battle on Earth is now decided. If you want to contribute more to this war, go to Asgard. In Asgard, you can also ask Odin for some magical artifacts to arm yourselves and increase your combat power. Thor released Loki and looked at everyone sincerely, saying, I'm sorry to have dragged Earth into this war. The upcoming battles will be even more dangerous. You don't need to get involved. Thor, we're friends. You can't stop a friend from helping you at a time like this, said Steve Rogers. He wasn't involved in the war between Asgard and the four great kingdoms, he was simply offering help to a friend. Steve's right, Natasha echoed, shrugging. Anyway, Earth doesn't need the Avengers anymore, we can go wherever we want. That's right, Thor, we're friends, we should face difficulties together, Aaron chimed in, only to be grabbed by Russell. They can go, but you can't. Why? Russell. I'm much better now then. Eileen jumped up, gesturing to Steve, Natasha, and Gaia. Because you're still a minor. Ignoring Eileen's protests, Russell pressed a hand to her forehead, insisting she not go, eliciting a burst of good-natured laughter from the others. Besides Eileen's underage status, the more important reason was Russell's realization of her lack of combat experience. During the battle with the cursed warrior Kurzel, she was completely bewildered, utterly clueless about her abilities and responsibilities. This situation would be even more pronounced on the battlefield, potentially turning her into a liability and a burden to her teammates. While Natasha and Steve were physically far inferior, they didn't have this problem. At most, they would die on the battlefield themselves, but they wouldn't harm their comrades. After the laughter subsided, Loki said, in that case, let's reorganize the teams and set off. Gwen, Wanda, Gaia, Dr. Banner, Pietro, you and Sif go to Vanaheim to prepare for battle. Steve, Natasha, you and Thor go to Nidwil to find the dwarf King Etrich to forge weapons. Hearing this, Thor asked, Loki, what about you? Are you still going to Alfheim alone? Loki nodded and said, don't worry, Thor. This mission is mainly for negotiation, there won't be any fighting, so there's no need to bring anyone else. If everyone agrees, let's go. Wait a minute, Russell called to Loki, tracing a line in the void to open a dimensional portal, from which he retrieved 3 shimmering white rings. Each ring was inlaid with a gem, the blue space stone, the purple power stone, and the red reality stone. Russell had intended to study the reality stone before handing all 3 gems to his 3 reserve members of the Sorcerer Supreme. But plans are subject to change, and with a major battle looming, there was no time for formalities. Russell glanced at Gwen, thought for a moment, and then channeled a shimmering white energy into his hand, transforming the ring holding the Infinity Stones into gloves. He then wrapped the stones inside the gloves and distributed them one by one. Loki, here's the Space Stone for you. If you encounter danger while traveling alone and don't have time to open a portal, use the Space Stone to escape. With a stone, you can instantly teleport to any space without restriction. It also has other uses, but you don't need to worry about them for now. Gwen, here's the Power Stone for you. It can compensate for your lack of offensive power. This stone can enhance your physical attack and defense capabilities, making you almost invincible. Wanda, here's the Reality Stone for you. It's a perfect match for your chaos magic, enhancing your various abilities and helping you easily alter reality, allowing you to experience a higher level of chaos magic. However, be careful. The Reality Stone is also known as the Ether, and it was once owned by the Dark Elves thousands of years ago. They are likely searching for it now. When using it, be careful to conceal it. If you are exposed, immediately run back to Kamartaj. Finally, Russell added, remember, do not try to break the gauntlet and directly touch the Infinity Stones inside. Loki, Gwen, and Wanda all accepted the gauntlet and nodded in understanding. The others turned to Russell, as if to say, do I have one too? Russell remained silent, then said softly, there are only 6 Infinity Stones in the universe. The remaining 3 are the Time Stone, the Mind Stone, and the Soul Stone. The Time Stone is with the Ancient One. Any of you who want it can try to borrow it from her. The Mind Stone is with me, but it's somewhat sinister and can affect the user's mind. The Soul Stone hasn't been created yet. However, if you want it, it's not impossible, you just need to. As if by fate, Natasha asked, what do you need? Russell replied, you just need to find a place and sacrifice your loved one. Natasha was speechless. Never mind then. I don't want to sacrifice my loved one for something like that, but you will sacrifice yourself to obtain the Soul Stone for your loved one. Russell thought to himself, without saying aloud. Glancing at the expectant eyes of the others, Russell raised his hand and unleashed several streams of shimmering white energy into their bodies. You've been enhanced, go for it. Chapter 232 A Chance Encounter. Vanaheim, the realm of the Vanir gods, is a beautiful and fertile land. From ancient times to the present, the Vanir gods have inhabited this land. After Odin conquered the 9 realms, the Aesir and Vanir gods intermarried, their relationship growing increasingly close, almost indistinguishable. The Vanir gods who went to Asgard became Asgardians. Frigga, the queen of Asgard, Heimdall, the deceased gatekeeper of the Rainbow Bridge, and Sif were all Vanir gods residing in Asgard. Therefore, the war between the 4 great realms and Asgard also reached Vanaheim. On the battlefield, Dark Elf warriors and Vanaheim warriors reverted to primitive forms, wielding swords, spears, and halberds in a fierce melee. Occasionally, some disregarded martial ethics, pulling out American-style Iaido guns and displaying incredible speed and accuracy within 7 paces. Further away, some madmen launched indiscriminate attacks using missiles. Damn it, the Dark Elf rebels have reached Vanaheim. Stepping out of the portal, Sif and Hogan looked at the battlefield ahead, their eyes sharpening instantly. The dilapidated houses, the burning jungle, and the smoke in the air, all told them that the peace of their homeland had been shattered. Without time to think, Sif and Hogan drew their swords and joined the battle. Hey, how do we distinguish between enemy and friendly forces? Gwen asked, but Sif and Hogan were already far away and didn't respond. Those with white braids are Dark Elves, and there are other strange-looking ones who aren't human. They're also enemy, Fandral reminded the others. On the battlefield, besides Dark Elf and Vanaheim warriors, there were also some strange races that had joined Malekith's army. Among them were several tall, burly, and ferocious-looking troll warriors. And what about those that look more like humans? Gwen continued. Fandral, you can tell them apart by looking at their uniforms. If you look closely, you can. Dr. Banner, I can tell them apart, but Hulk can't. Fandral looked around. Warriors of various races were locked in fierce combat, making the entire battlefield incredibly chaotic. In this situation, those unfamiliar with the characteristics of the various races in the 9 realms would indeed find it difficult to distinguish friend from foe. But fortunately, Fandral pointed to the outer edge of the battlefield, where Dark Elf warships, shaped like crosses, were occasionally firing sniper cannons. Why don't you go and shoot down those Dark Elf warships? Those inside are definitely the enemy. Okay, I understand. Gwen nodded and jumped towards the Dark Elf fleet. The others followed, and as they approached the Dark Elf fleet, they happened to encounter a squadron of Dark Elves. Inside the Dark Elf flagship, the Dark Elf leader Malekith stood quietly watching the battlefield ahead, but his mind was elsewhere. What are the test results? Is there any energy fluctuation of ether particles in Vanaheim? Turning his head, Malekith asked his adjutant beside him. The adjutant's fingers flew across the ship's control panel, performing a series of complex and seemingly incomprehensible operations. Ultimately, the result was nothing. Malekith nodded, muttering to himself. The ether isn't in Asgard, nor in Vanaheim, which is close to Asgard. So where is it? Could it be in the 9 realms? As he spoke, Malekith grew increasingly agitated, a bloodthirsty urge rising within him. A sinister smile crept across his lips as he ordered, land the ship. I need to stretch my legs. At Malekith's command, the Dark Elf flagship began its slow descent. Finally, its base planted firmly in the ground of Vanaheim. Stepping onto the Vanaheim soil, Malekith twirled his longsword, turning his wrist, and walked towards the battlefield. While aboard the ship amidst the clouds, the battlefield seemed close at hand. Only after landing did he realize that the battlefield was still quite a distance away. Malekith wasn't in a hurry, running towards the battlefield at a steady pace. On the plain, the grass swayed in the wind. From afar, Gwen's and Malekith's groups spotted each other. Attack, fire, almost simultaneously, Gwen and Hulk dashed out of their ranks, charging towards the Dark Elves. Slightly different, Gwen dodged and weaved as she charged, while Hulk, without dodging, covered his eyes with one hand and charged headlong. In the distance, Wanda waved her hands, rapidly firing magic missiles to provide fire support for her teammates. The dense barrage of magic missiles hurtled towards the Dark Elves in parabolic arcs. The missiles trailed crimson contrails, like a volley of arrows, creating a terrifying spectacle. Equipped with a reality stone, Wanda's casting speed and spell power had been greatly enhanced. She couldn't help but stare intently at the magic missiles she fired, eager to see their results. Soon, Wanda saw someone from the Dark Elves immediately take out an unknown device and set up an energy barrier, attempting to intercept her magic missiles. Seeing this, Wanda flicked her fingers through the air, golden magical sparks flashing, and a massive portal suddenly appeared in front of the magic barrage. The magic missiles, combined with the portal spell, instantly crossed the energy barrier set up by the Dark Elves. Boom, 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 boom. A series of rapid explosions rang out, and the unsuspecting Dark Elves were blown to pieces by Wanda's magic missiles. The entire Dark Elf squad seemed to have perished in this bombardment. The missiles originally aimed at Gwen and Hulk stopped abruptly. Gwen and Hulk seized the opportunity to close the distance. Covering her mouth and nose, Gwen waited for the smoke to clear. All she saw was devastation, a scene of dismemberment and broken limbs. She had wiped out the entire enemy force? Suddenly, Gwen pivoted on her right foot, lightly touching the ground with her toes, and spun around. She dodged Malekith's thrusting sword with lightning precision. "Watch out, there's someone else," Gwen shouted a warning, both to Hulk nearby and to Wanda, Gaia, and Pietro further away. "I didn't expect you to dodge my sword." Interesting, Malekith stopped his charge and turned to look at Gwen. His cold, bloodthirsty eyes made Gwen's spider sense throb wildly, seemingly warning her to stay away. Gwen's expression turned serious. She took a deep breath and cautiously prepared herself. If it weren't for her spider sense, she would have been in serious trouble. "Hulk, invincible," Hulk roared, striding forward and throwing a punch at Malekith. The fist cut through the air, carrying unparalleled power. Before it even struck Malekith, the attack caused a sharp pain in Malekith's face, as if it had been lightly grazed by a sharp blade. Hulk's keen senses also detected the danger emanating from Malekith, which fueled his rage, causing him to unleash even greater power. Chapter 233 Malekith, obtained without any effort. "Hell, big oaf," Malekith chuckled, black lines creeping across his face. An external force merged with his own, suddenly unleashing even greater speed. Crouching low, Malekith dodged Hulk's punch and slipped under his arm. At the same time, he spun around and delivered a light slash with his sword, slicing across Hulk's waist and sending a spray of blood flying. As he paused, the sword tip pointed downwards, dripping blood. Hulk winced in pain but didn't lose his composure. Taking advantage of Malekith's showmanship, he delivered a powerful back kick without turning his head. Bang! Malekith flew through the air, only stopping when he crashed into a small hill. Something's wrong. 9 out of 10 things are wrong. On a special cloud disguised as a cloud, Russell watched Malekith being kicked away by Hulk, speaking with absolute certainty. He has two energies, one his own, and the other external. That external energy must come from the entity behind him. After saying this, Russell looked at the observer, signaling for his comment. The observer simply smiled, took a sip of his lemonade, and remained silent. He was an observer with principles. Seeing that the observer didn't speak, Russell didn't press him. He respected the observer's professional ethics. With a light tap of his finger, Russell quietly added something to the observer's glass. "Hiss, Russell, why is this lemonade so sour?" Faced with the observer's question, Russell just smiled and remained silent. A little trivia: Sourness is a sensation caused by the stimulation of hydrogen ions on the tongue's mucous membrane. He added a large amount of hydrogen ions to the observer's glass, so of course it tasted sour. Back to the battle between Gwen and the others and Malekith. At this time, Gwen, Wanda, Gaia, Hulk, and Pietro had all joined the fight. The thick-skinned Hulk continued to act as a tank, absorbing Malekith's damage. His surface was now covered in blood, looking quite disheveled. Upon closer inspection, however, it became clear that these were all superficial wounds, and most had already healed. Only the blood clotted on the skin made them appear gruesome. The other four sought opportunities to attack Malekith. However, as the fight progressed, Pietro and Gaia discovered that their attacks were largely ineffective against Malekith. They simply withdrew from the battle to intercept the Dark Elf warriors coming to reinforce him. Wanda, is there any way to control him? Gwen asked, taking a moment to speak. Wanda, yes, good. Wanda, find a way to control him. I'm going to give him a good beating. Gwen leaped out of the battle, focusing her attention on her right hand, clad in a glove inlaid with a power gem, using the glove to activate the power gem's power. In an instant, boundless energy transcended space and time, converging on Gwen's right hand, condensing into a dazzling purple sphere of light. Feeling the terrifying power within the purple sphere, Gwen raised her right hand and clenched her fist tightly. At that moment, she even had the illusion that she held the entire world in her grasp. Take this, good neighbor Spider Punch. This power continued to gather until Gwen felt she was about to lose control. Then she unleashed a powerful punch at Malekith. Boom! As Gwen punched, a beam of purple energy erupted from her fist. At the same time, Wanda's glove, inlaid with a reality stone, glowed bright red. Several crimson chains appeared out of thin air, rapidly contracting before Malekith could react, binding him tightly. Wanda concentrated, preparing to wrestle with Malekith. However, to Wanda's surprise, Malekith didn't struggle. Instead, he seemed frozen, allowing the crimson chains to bind him. Truly, what I saw was right under my nose, Malekith muttered to himself, sensing a long-lost aura on these crimson chains. The aura of ether. Ether, on this sorcerer. Although he didn't know why, even at such close range, he hadn't sensed the presence of ether. Malekith still made that judgment. Coming to his senses, Malekith's gaze fell upon Wanda, his eyes growing even brighter. A faint purple light could be seen flickering within. Rumble. The purple energy symbolizing the Power Stone erupted upon the unsuspecting Malekith, unleashing terrifying destructive power instantly. Silently, the part of Malekith's body that touched the purple energy twisted and collapsed instantly. The intense pain awakened Malekith. Before his horrified eyes, a purple beam pierced his chest, then tore his body apart. Not only Malekith's body, but the crimson chains binding him were also destroyed by the Power Stone's power. Snap! With the accumulated power released, Gwen's right hand fell limply to her side. Cracks covered her right glove, which was now rapidly repairing itself. Phew, it's over. Who is this guy? He was incredibly strong. Gwen let out a long sigh, about to sit down and rest, when her spider sense suddenly activated again. No. He might not be dead yet. Not dead yet? What happened? Wasn't he supposed to be completely gone? Wanda asked. Malekith and the spot where he had stood had been completely destroyed by the power of the Power Stone. It seemed that not a single trace of matter remained. How could he not be dead under such circumstances? Gwen didn't answer, but instead followed the spider sense's guidance, carefully searching for the source of the crisis. There, Gwen pointed to a small black dot on the ground, the spot where Malekith had stood. Looking closely at this small black dot, Wanda suddenly felt uneasy. Wanda, what is this? A symbiote? Russell looked at the remnants of Malekith's death, lost in thought. Why would Malekith have a symbiote? Could the person behind him be the symbiote god? No, Russell speculated. Although he couldn't rule out the possibility that Malekith had obtained it by chance, Russell preferred to believe that it wasn't a coincidence. Better safe than sorry. Even if the guess is wrong, there's no harm in having a backup plan. The symbiote god, Kel, also known as the Black King, enjoys expanding the darkness of the universe by conquering, destroying, and ruining every life form he encounters. From this perspective, Kel and Malekith are truly birds of a feather, both wanting to plunge the universe into darkness. Although the former's target is the multiverse, the latter's is only his own universe. In this light, it's understandable that the symbiote god would invest in Malekith, the leader of the Dark Elves. With a thought, Russell reached across space and retrieved the black substance left behind by Malekith after his death. He wanted to examine it carefully to determine whether it originated from Cal or was accidentally obtained by Malekith. Chapter 234 Symbiotic Little Glutton. This is a symbiote. Russell's voice rang out beside Gwen and Wanda. That dark elf was Malekith, the leader of the Dark Elves. He's dead, and the symbiote that parasitized Malekith was killed along with him by the power of the Power Stone. This is the offspring of the symbiote that separated from Malekith before its complete death. He was the leader of the Dark Elves. Gwen pointed to the spot where Malekith had been obliterated, her expression filled with disbelief. She had thought Malekith was just a general of the Dark Elves. She never imagined that a simple skirmish would lead to the capture of the leader of the Dark Elves. The leader of the Dark Elves died so easily? That's too childish. Wanda was equally incredulous. The Dark Elves can rival Asgard, so how come their leader is so weak? Unseen by Gwen and Wanda, Russell rolled his eyes and grumbled, Wanda, is it possible that Malekith, the leader of the Dark Elves, isn't weak, but rather that the power of the Infinity Stones is too strong? At the cost of his gauntlet, the vessel, being almost destroyed, the Power Stone unleashed its charged attack. The Dark Elves aren't known for their defense, and Malekith, caught completely off guard, took the hit head-on. He was doomed. Gwen suddenly asked, if the Dark Elf leader is dead, does that mean the war is over? Russell replied, it shouldn't be that easy. Once a war begins, it's not something that can be resolved by the death of one or two people. If you want to end this war quickly and minimize casualties, Gwen, you could try taking advantage of the Dark Elves being leaderless and launching a surprise attack on their command post. Take down the Dark Elf command post, let Wanda control the Dark Elf commander, and have him issue the order to surrender. Gwen, okay, I'll try. Wanda, let's go. With that, Gwen and Wanda began their operation. Russell also focused his attention on the symbiote in his hand. He then discovered that, just like the previous spider totem, this symbiote was desperately trying to burrow into Russell's body, complete the fusion, and form a symbiotic relationship. However, like the previous spider totem, this newborn symbiote couldn't break through Russell's outer defenses to enter his body. Even if it did enter, it wouldn't affect Russell's cellular structure. Let me see where you come from. Russell's divine power surged, sending a wisp into the newborn symbiote, while simultaneously maximizing his perception. He vaguely sensed a bewildered newborn soul, like a little glutton, clinging to the wisp of divine power Russell had injected into the symbiote. However, this little glutton's teeth weren't very strong. No matter how hard it tried, it couldn't chew through this wisp of divine power. Therefore, it emitted a peculiar emotion, hungry, hungry, hungry. Russell, the symbiote can transfer the host's memories to the next host. His original intention was to obtain Malekith's memories through this newborn symbiote, to see how he acquired his symbiote. However, this newborn symbiote, which had not yet completed its parasitic process, had a soul that was too fragile. Russell worried that it wouldn't be able to withstand the pressure of accessing the memories. Russell remained calm and injected a small amount of attribute point energy to feed the newborn symbiote. To Russell's surprise, the little glutton displayed its potential as a voracious eater from birth. As soon as the attribute point energy was injected into the newborn symbiote, its body trembled violently. The attribute point energy, along with its trembling body, was transmitted to every corner of its body, gradually absorbed and digested. Afterwards, the body nourished the soul, and the little glutton's soul was strengthened slightly. A moment later, the attribute point energy was fully digested, and the little glutton expressed its emotions again. This time, the emotions were clearer and more precise. Baby, hungry, food, interesting, Russell murmured to himself, injecting some more attribute point energy. The little glutton's emotional expression was more accurate, not only because it was stronger than when it was born. Russell sensed a faint connection with the symbiote, as if it had completed a unique form of parasitism. This connection grew stronger as the little glutton absorbed more attribute points, far stronger than the connections of others who absorbed the same amount. After a long while, the little glutton stopped absorbing attribute points. It had swelled from the size of a fingernail to the size of a fist, its color changing from black to translucent white. Bayo bayo, the little glutton conveyed its emotion again. However, communication remained impossible due to language barriers, writing system, and brainwave incompatibility. This was understandable, given its unique parasitic method. It hadn't been able to directly copy knowledge, thoughts, and memories from Russell to form its own personality and psychology. It needed time to develop its own quiet study. Russell soothed the little glutton, using telepathy to transmit videos of prenatal and infant education to it. Daddy, Daddy, the little glutton's learning speed was astonishing. It understood the educational videos Russell transmitted in a very short time. The intelligence level reached that of a 4 or 5-year-old child. The reason it couldn't reach a higher level was that the early childhood education materials Russell collected only went up to 4 or 5-year-olds. Russell had no experience with education beyond that and needed to carefully consider it. Since 4 or 5-year-olds were already capable of normal communication, Russell decided to experiment with the little glutton's abilities. Little glutton, what abilities do you have? I'm super powerful. The little glutton suddenly jumped from Russell's palm, pounced on his head, and enveloped him from top to bottom. However, its shape didn't solidify for a long time. Imperial armor. Seeing this, Russell transmitted the image of Imperial armor from his mind. The next moment, the little glutton's shape solidified, transforming into Imperial armor, covering Russell's surface. I'm super powerful. Russell, cooperating with the little glutton's control, raised his fist, squatted down, and punched a cloud disguised as an ordinary cloud at his feet. The fist cut through the wind, becoming a blurpop, a muffled sound, and the fist bounced back. The white cloud beneath his feet remained perfectly intact. Not a crack, not even the slightest ripple. I'm really amazing, the little glutton's voice rang out, tinged with a sob and a hint of grievance. Pop pop pop. Seemingly eager to prove its power, the little glutton controlled Russell's body, punching the white cloud again and again. But no matter how hard it tried, it was all in vain. Russell seized the opportunity to secretly observe and record the little glutton's various data. If the symbiote and attribute point energy compatibility was high, his army of apostles would be secured. Chapter 235 Nar, the God of Symbiotes. The Apostle Army Project, also known as the Ascended Project, is another major project for Russell after the Sorcerer Supreme. The Sorcerer Supreme is responsible for defending the home planet, something Russell agreed to when he was young after receiving an investment from the Ancient One. The Apostles are responsible for finding energy sources, which is crucial for Russell's further advancement. The fourth stage requires far more energy than the previous stages. He has already invested over 30 billion units of energy, yet he still hasn't seen the effects of the fourth stage's completion. Clearly, it would take him an extremely long time to accumulate enough energy on his own. According to Russell's calculations, a habitable planet, Earth, can generate around 30,000 attribute points per day, while a star, Proxima Centauri, can generate around 8,000. Russell estimates that if he used demonic means, killing the goose that lays the golden eggs, and wiping out the entire population of Earth at once, he could obtain around 1.5 billion units of energy. However, this method would damage his moral compass and easily attract attacks from unknown forces. Russell wouldn't do it. But killing the goose that lays the golden eggs? If we find an uninhabited star system and use some physics knowledge to accelerate the star's nuclear fusion reaction, releasing the energy that would normally burn for millions or billions of years in a very short time, that's promising. Russell suddenly realized that he had only thought about the attribute points a star could provide daily, which was less than that of a habitable planet. He hadn't considered that he couldn't use killing the chicken to keep warm or draining the pond to catch all the fish approach on a habitable planet. But he could use this method to absorb stellar energy. It's decided then. I'll give it a try after I finish this task. Regaining his composure, Russell didn't stop the symbiote, little glutton, from continuing to control his body and pound the clouds beneath his feet. Instead, he quietly reduced the hardness and resilience of the clouds. Russell didn't want to undermine little glutton's confidence. If the conditions were right, he would need little glutton to have more children to build an ascended legion in the future. Russell was very patient with his potential right-hand man. Besides, he called him Dad. While little glutton was focused on pounding the clouds, Russell infiltrated his consciousness to examine the memories from his father symbiote. In particular, the memories concerning Malekith. Venom? The little glutton's father was Venom? Was it the venom of this universe, or the venom of another? With these questions in mind, Russell continued to examine Venom's memories. In a chance encounter, Venom arrived in this universe and met Malekith. Later, through Venom's memories, Malekith discovered the symbiote god Null. Thus, seeking power to reclaim the ether, revitalize the Dark Elves, and exact revenge on Asgard, Malekith began researching Null. Malekith discovered that Null was an ancient deity who existed since the beginning of the universe. He was known as the Black King and had once killed a celestial with a black death sword. Afterwards, he created the symbiote race and used them to create armies and dragons, thus embarking on his path to conquer the multiverse. Malekith would normally never have dared to provoke such a multiverse overlord. Malekith unexpectedly discovered that the symbiote god Kal's ideology was remarkably similar to that of the Dark Elves. Both wanted to plunge the universe into darkness. Ultimately, after weighing the options, Malekith decided to communicate with Kal according to the ritual recorded in the documents, borrowing his power. Kal was very satisfied with this race that shared his ideals, and with Malekith's voluntary conversion. Therefore, he generously granted Malekith his power. In return, Malekith only needed to conquer the universe in the name of Kal, plunging it into darkness. I see. So, Kal has his eye on this universe. After reading the parts of Venom's memories about Malekith and Kal, Russell frowned. The Celestials rarely act alone. Kal's ability to kill a Celestial and then escape unscathed demonstrates his formidable strength. However, I think I can do it too. Strength isn't the key point. The key point is, what stage is the symbiote god Null at right now? Malekith's collected information about the symbiote god Null was clearly incomplete and outdated. According to Russell's understanding before his transmigration, the symbiote god Null was born at the beginning of the 7th generation of the multiverse. At that time, he wasn't called the symbiote god, but the primal dark god, the lord of the abyss, the cosmic Satan. He became the dark god a full era earlier than Chthon of the current 8th generation of the multiverse, Marvel Universe. However, in the end, his nickname was stolen. In the 8th generation of the multiverse, the symbiote god Null will suffer 2 Waterloo events. Once, he will die in battle, and later be resurrected, and the Black Death Sword will be lost and picked up by the Godslayer, Gale. The other time, during the invasion of Earth 616 in the main universe, he will be cleaved in two by Thor's hammer, severing his connection with the symbiotes. Ultimately, the disconnected symbiotes scattered throughout the universe, and after learning what truth, goodness, and beauty are, they collectively rebelled. The rebellious symbiotes imprisoned their creator, the symbiote god Nar, on the planet Krinta. So, symbiote god Nar, what stage are you in now? Stepping out to a dimensional fragment outside Earth 404, Russell casually drew upon some dark power, outlining a magic circle to communicate with the symbiote god. The moment the circle formed, a black pillar of light shot into the sky, disappearing into the void and creating ripples. A moment later, a fragmented voice echoed from the unfathomable depths of the void. Who is calling upon the great lord of the abyss, the cosmic Satan, the symbiote god? Accompanying the voice was the gaze cast by the symbiote god Nar. Russell met his gaze, piercing through layers of cosmic membranes and traversing endless space, to see the symbiote god Nar's current appearance. He sat high above. Behind him was a throne forged from white bones, its spine coiled like a dragon or serpent. He held a scarlet longsword, its patterns like pulsating veins. Terrifying, evil, cruel, bloody. Most importantly, freedom. The symbiote god Null of this era was free. Russell couldn't help but feel fortunate. Fortunate for the symbiote god Null. Fortunate that he was communicating with Null from a dimensional fragment outside the universe, without worrying about revealing Earth 404's coordinates. Otherwise, to prevent Null from invading the universe containing Earth 404, Russell would have to go and kill him right now. The symbiote god Null's first impression on Russell matched his titles. But he lacked one thing, power. Chapter 236 Kneel down. How could the symbiote god Nar be so weak? Despite the endless distance and the weakened perception, Russell struggled to accurately gauge the energy intensity within Nar. However, Nar's energy level was almost a level lower than that of Sithon. This was somewhat absurd. Born at the beginning of the 7th generation of the multiverse, predating the 8th, an ancient evil god. That's it? No wonder Sithon stole the title of God of Darkness. Are you summoning the great lord of the abyss, the cosmic Satan, the symbiote god, you reptile? Seeing Russell's prolonged silence, Nar asked again in a deep voice. He assumed Russell was stunned by his aura. Nar shifted his gaze from Russell to the little gluttonous symbiote beside him, lost in thought. Kneel. Now that you have merged with my creation, the symbiotic little glutton, the great symbiotic god is willing to accept your submission and allow you to join my army. What did you say? Russell snapped out of his daze and asked. The symbiotic god Nar slashed with his longsword, his enormous scarlet wings unfurling behind him, his aura blotting out the sky. His aura pierced through spatial rifts, traversing endless distances. Kneel before your god. Thud, stimulated by the aura of the symbiotic god Nar, the symbiotic little glutton's body went limp, turning into a puddle of mud, sliding off Russell's shoulder and crashing to the ground. It still couldn't help but tremble and shake. Russell glanced at the symbiotic little glutton before looking away. Although somewhat disgusted, he didn't criticize it further. After all, it was just a child. Only a few hours old. I don't think so, Rip. Russell reached into the void and ripped a large hole in the void. He stepped forward, directly plunging into the void rift. Initially, Russell hadn't bothered with the symbiote god Nar, considering him so weak, intending to ignore him completely. Unexpectedly, despite his weakness, Nar was so confident, spouting arrogant words. Within the spatial rift, space-time was distorted and chaotic, like a ferocious spatial turbulence, capable of easily tearing apart all conventional matter in the material universe. Guided by the aura emanating from Nar, Russell's figure flashed, transforming into a streak of light and rushing straight forward. Boom. 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 Along the way, Russell smashed through the distorted space-time, heading deeper into the void, leaving an indescribable blank path. The symbiote god Nar sat on his throne, a look of doubt on his face. Could this not be his follower? Why such a strong reaction? Nar looked at Russell again. He wanted to see what this man was up to. So fast. The symbiote god Nar was shocked. He hadn't expected Russell's speed to be so terrifying. He reacted swiftly, drawing his sword to block Tyr. In the next instant, Russell traversed the endless universe, arriving before Nar, the symbiote god, and swung his shimmering fist, delivering a powerful punch to Nar's face. Bang! Crack! Two sounds rang out in succession. The first was the sound of Russell's fist striking the Black Death sword in Nar's hand. The second was the sound of the Black Death sword shattering in Nar's hand. Russell's punch shattered Nar's sword, and the force of the impact sent Nar flying backward. After regaining his footing, Nar summoned another sword from the abyss. Simultaneously, the abyss spread and climbed up Nar's body, cloaking him in black armor. In the distance, a colossal symbiote dragon also flew rapidly towards them. Who are you? Having prepared himself, the symbiote god Nar finally felt a little relieved and looked at Russell with suspicion. Looking at the fully armed symbiote god Nar, Russell merely smiled contemptuously and said softly, "Kneel before your god." Ha! Ho ha ho ha! The symbiote god Nar was enraged, laughing loudly, his laughter laced with sarcasm. Russell, is it funny, symbiote god Nar, isn't it funny? I am the Lord of the Abyss, the primal god of darkness. I was born when the universe was still nothingness. Saying this, the symbiote god Nar raised his head, looking down at Russell. My god? I am older than this universe. This universe has no god. From today onwards, I do. Russell activated his divine power and drew energy from the luminous white space. A luminous white light permeated from Russell's body, gathering on his right fist. A pure white energy condensed, remaining dormant, yet the surrounding spacetime began to distort and deform. Suddenly, Russell stepped forward, his figure instantly transforming into a streak of light, rushing towards the symbiote god Nar at near infinite speed. Tyr, where his figure passed, spacetime ripped apart, leaving a trail of nothingness. This was a punch that transcended time and space. The symbiote god's scalp tingled. In the blink of an eye, before his body could react, Russell's fist had already slammed into his face. Boom! The instant Russell's fist struck the symbiote god Nar, time seemed to freeze, both figures stood still, and the symbiote god Nar was not blasted away. But because of this, he would bear the full damage of Russell's punch. Divine power erupted, a brilliant white light blazing forth, engulfing the symbiote god Nar. Through the scattered white light, one could see the two colors of energy clashing and overlapping within Nar's form. It was the deep black energy symbolizing the abyss, and the pure white energy symbolizing Russell. Two energies clashed fiercely on the body of the symbiote god Nar. Damn it! You want to kill me? Nar roared. His kill meant complete annihilation, severing his connection to the abyss of the universe, preventing him from ever resurrecting in the primordial darkness again. This was a conceptual attack. What else? Russell replied irritably. He had acted to eliminate the threat completely. He didn't want Nar to suddenly resurrect and disturb him again after hundreds or thousands of years, when he had forgotten him. You can't kill me. Darkness is everywhere, the symbiote god roared, but it was only impotent rage. Now, This was a battle between Russell and the abyss of the universe, not between Russell and himself. Darkness is everywhere? I doubt it. Seeing that he couldn't sever Nar's connection to the abyss, Russell became ruthless, directly activating his talent, energy absorption, to draw energy from the abyss. Once I've drained all the primal dark power from the depths of the universe, let's see how you'll be resurrected. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 237. As long as the cosmic abyss remains, as long as the dark energy never dries up, I will never die. Nar, the symbiotic god, the first being born from the abyss of the universe, is a born lord of the abyss, controlling primordial dark energy. As long as the abyss of the universe exists and the primordial dark energy is inexhaustible, he is immortal. But, what if the primordial dark energy dries up? Russell shone with a brilliant white light, and behind him, countless white spikes resembling spider legs grew, piercing into the shadow of Nar, the symbiotic god. Pop, a ripple spread through the void as the white spikes, as if piercing a solid object, emitted a crisp sound. The next moment, a terrifying suction force emanated, and the white spikes, as if coming alive, drew primordial dark energy from the abyss through the shadow beneath Nar's feet. You madman! You think you can kill me like this? Nar, the symbiotic god, noticed Russell's actions and sneered. Over countless years, he had encountered many mad mages who attempted to devour primordial dark power. But without exception, they were all corrupted by the primordial dark energy, reduced to monsters, neither human nor demon. When you gaze into the abyss also gazes into you. The symbiote god, Nar, spoke in a sinister, low voice. He discovered that Russell's power and the power of the abyss were intertwined within him, inseparable. He then controlled his creation to launch a sneak attack from behind. The symbiote dragon arrived belatedly, its mouth opening, purplish-black energy condensing in its throat. Rumble. The next moment, dragon breath erupted, a beam of purplish-black energy striking Russell's back. Wherever the energy beam passed, the air exploded, space-time shattered, and countless bottomless void rifts appeared. This breath couldn't harm Russell, but it still broke the somewhat static stalemate between Russell and the symbiote god, Nar. As the purple energy beam approached Russell, it rapidly twisted and deformed, then vanished without a trace, like a mud ox sinking into the sea. Along with it, the space-time around Russell also twisted and deformed. With a snap, like a mirror shattering, Russell and the symbiote god now fell into another universe. Using the momentum from their fall, Russell transformed his fist into a claw, grabbed Null by the neck, and slammed him into a rock fragment the size of an island floating in space. Bang! Rumble. In an instant, the two pierced through the rock fragment, leaving behind a devastated, uninhabited island. The shockwave from the explosion swept across the area, pushing away smaller fragments. Although it was only a fleeting glimpse, Russell could still tell that this was the remnant of a blasted planet. Without time for a closer look, another sharp sound rang out, and the two broke through the cosmic barrier once more, plunging into another universe. Only a large rock fragment exploded, the shockwave pushing away smaller fragments. Finally, done, light years away from where Russell and Null had appeared and disappeared so quickly, a red-skinned robot inlaid with 6 gems of different colors murmured to itself. The entire universe had returned to calm, and the robot realized his mission was complete. Now he was merely a meaningless program. The robot slowly closed his eyes, entering standby mode. Although he had won a war against the entire universe, what awaited him was not victory, but eternal solitude. In this eternal solitude, he reached a level of consciousness previously unattainable. The entire universe seemed to be contained within his heart. What? The robot suddenly looked up, his gaze piercing through infinite distance, looking towards the distant starry sky. There, 2 figures flashed by. Why, are there more people? The blue gem on the robot's chest flashed, instantly traversing endless distance to the place where Russell and the symbiotic god Nar had appeared. Then, the green gem on his chest shone, time reversed, and the events that had just occurred there were repeated. The first void rift appeared, and huge rock fragments exploded below. A second void rift appeared. The whole event seemed somewhat absurd, lacking the most crucial element, humans. No, that's not how it works, the robot muttered to itself, the green gem on its chest flashing again, reversing time once more. Simultaneously, the red gem on its chest flashed, constructing two figures. This time, it finally succeeded in reconstructing the entire sequence of events. So that's how it is. Beyond this space, there are other spaces. Beyond this universe, there are other universes. The robot's voice was low and hoarse, its emotions unreadable. It slowly flew to the place where Russell and the symbiote god Null had disappeared, all 6 gems flashing simultaneously. Beyond this world, there are many worlds. Many worlds, that need me. With a crisp crack, the robot followed Russell and the symbiote god Null's footsteps, breaking through the cosmic barrier and disappearing. Meanwhile, Russell didn't bother to keep track of how many universes he and the symbiote god Null had traversed. In any case, the symbiote god Null couldn't escape his control, and he couldn't stop the symbiote god Null's actions. Finally, the two broke through the cosmic barrier once more, but instead of falling into another universe, they entered a void, continuously plummeting downwards. Upon arriving here, the symbiote god Null ceased his escape. Seeing this, Russell scoffed, "Is this the grave you chose for yourself? Born there, die there, not bad at all." This place was none other than the birthplace of the symbiote god Null, the cosmic abyss. "No, this is the burial ground I chose for you. I hope you like it," Null retorted menacingly. He hadn't expected Russell to follow him all the way to the cosmic abyss. Along the way, Russell had countless opportunities to simply kill him, but he hadn't done so. It was as if he was determined to fight him to the death. "You will regret your arrogance," Null uttered a harsh threat. Crimson lights illuminated the surrounding void, and as the distance closed, they became clear, the eyes of various creatures from the cosmic abyss. At this moment, their eyes glowed red, ready to devour their prey. "Wait until you make your god shed its first blood before you start spouting nonsense," Russell scoffed, patting the face of the symbiote god, Null. Then, he tossed him aside. "Thanks for bringing me to this granary," Russell muttered to himself, making a mouth-opening gesture. The camera zoomed out, revealing a gigantic maw. Beneath this maw, the symbiote god Null and the dark creatures of the cosmic abyss appeared as small as mayflies. They were swallowed whole, unaware of their predicament. Crunch. Crunch, rumble, the gigantic maw snapped down, causing the cosmic abyss to tremble. It felt as if a piece of flesh had been torn away, causing it to shudder in pain. Chapter 238 I am the Abyss. "What have you done?" In a daze, the symbiote god Null reappeared not far from Russell. However, his energy intensity was slightly lower than when Russell first saw him. And this was something he could never make up for. "I'm eating cake, can't you tell?" Russell grinned, making a rather unrealistic analogy. "If you compare the cosmic abyss to a bowl, isn't the dark energy the cake inside?" "What, do you think my analogy is wrong?" As Russell spoke, he fully activated his talent, energy absorption, absorbing the dark energy from the cosmic abyss. In an instant, the dark energy converged, forming a huge vortex. At the center of the vortex, there seemed to be a bottomless black hole, its terrifying suction force firmly grasping the dark energy, devouring it completely. Not only the primordial dark energy, but also other matter and life in the cosmic abyss, once captured and torn apart by this terrifying suction force, would also be swallowed into the black hole. "You're really insane," the symbiote god Null sneered. Watching Russell unleash his power, devouring everything in the cosmic abyss, only one thought occupied his mind: seeking death. Inviting a god is easy, sending him away is difficult. Devouring primal dark energy is easy, but separating it is difficult. He waited, waiting for this reckless mage to be consumed by the primal dark energy, his mind corrupted, and he to fall into the abyss. "I warned you, when you gaze into the abyss also gazes into you." The symbiote god Null controlled the primal dark energy from further away in the cosmic abyss to converge here. He also signaled to the surrounding dark creatures, ordering them to swim outside the vortex of dark energy. He was just waiting for this crazed mage to be consumed by the dark energy backlash before he could finish him off and leave him permanently in the abyss. If I could use symbiotes to parasitize him, that would be another terrifying force. No, such a terrifying force cannot be parasitized by those low-level symbiotes, lest they betray me. How can I best utilize such a powerful force? The symbiote god Null's thoughts soared, envisioning a bright future. However, time ticked by, and Russell maintained his initial pace, absorbing primal dark energy like an abyssal monster, never satisfied. The massive amount of primal dark energy flowing into his body seemed to have no effect on him. "What a fool," selling his father's land without a care, Russell thought to himself, watching the symbiote god Nar stand there dumbfounded. Nar neither fought him, slowing down his absorption of primal dark energy, nor did he control the primal dark energy to resist his devouring. He even helped gather the primal dark energy, accelerating Russell's energy absorption. No wonder he was born an era earlier than Sithin, yet the title of God of Darkness was ultimately stolen. Both started as gods, even higher. But now, Nar's strength was inferior to Sithin's. But that's normal. Adversity breeds contempt. Comfort breeds contempt. Nar's living environment was far better than Sithin's. If Sithin hadn't worked hard, he would have become food for other gods in the ancient war billions of years ago. Even if the symbiote god Nar doesn't try hard enough and suffers a few defeats, it doesn't matter. With a cosmic abyss as a safety net, he can recover after a while. However, this time, the cosmic abyss might not be able to support him. As time passed, quantitative change led to qualitative change, and the vortex formed by the primordial dark energy shrank slightly. Russell, at the center of the vortex, knew that the amount of primordial dark energy he had absorbed had already affected the entire cosmic abyss. At this moment, the symbiote god Nar felt uneasy. With a muffled groan, Russell controlled a wisp of primordial dark energy, letting it climb up his neck and face. It seemed that by enduring a massive amount of primordial dark energy, his mind was nearing its limit. Gradually, wisps of black lines climbed up Russell's eyes, dyeing the whites of his eyes black. His originally black pupils also became even deeper under the influence of the primordial dark energy. Phew! The symbiote god Nar let out a long sigh. The massive loss of primordial dark energy had affected the cosmic abyss, and as the Lord of the Abyss, he had noticed it earlier than Russell. However, his sunk costs were too high, and he couldn't let go. He could only hope that this despicable, insane mage would be corrupted by the primal dark energy and remain permanently in the cosmic abyss. Otherwise, if Russell left now, the cosmic abyss would suffer a huge loss. Even if he died and was resurrected, his strength would be greatly reduced. Be on guard, don't let this mage escape. The symbiotic god Nar instructed his other abyssal creatures and symbiotic dragons to be on guard while silently reinforcing the cosmic abyss's defenses. At the same time, he didn't forget to continue gathering primal dark energy. In his view, a great battle was imminent. When this mage realized that his mind could not withstand such a massive amount of primal dark energy and was about to lose control, he would definitely stop devouring it and escape from the cosmic abyss. At that time, it would be his turn to feed the young master. He wanted to tell this mage that primal dark energy was not something he could absorb or stop at will. However, if the symbiotic god Nar were more experienced, he would realize that although Russell's condition seemed to be getting worse and worse, and he was getting closer and closer to losing control of his mind, but his rate of absorbing the surrounding primordial dark energy did not slow down in the slightest. Another long period of time passed, and the war between Asgard and the four great kingdoms entered a new phase. In Vanaheim, Gwen and others, after killing Malekith, the leader of the Dark Elves, successfully destroyed the Dark Elf command post. Wanda controlled the Dark Elf commanders, issued the surrender order, and ended the war. Loki, traveling to Alfheim, the kingdom of the Light Elves, encountered his biological father, Laufey, the Frost Giant King. A fierce battle ensued, and Loki was ultimately defeated, using the Space Stone to escape. Thor, traveling to Jotunheim, the kingdom of the dwarves, with the help of the dwarf king Eitrich, repaired Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, in the name of love. With Mjolnir, Thor's power returned to its peak, defeating the Angel Queen. The Angel Queen, under the cover of the War Angels, retreated in disarray. Finally, the Asgardians and the anti-Asgardians gathered in Asgard, preparing for the final battle. At this moment, the symbiotic god Null finally sensed something was amiss. Despite his repeated self-deception, he was now forced to confront this dark, bloody reality. The primal dark energy of the cosmic abyss had been depleted, and the signs of the Mad Mage's corruption by the primal dark energy vanished without a trace in an instant, just like the primal dark energy itself in the cosmic abyss. Chapter 239 Attribute Panel Advancement. The primordial dark energy, like a vast ocean, in the abyss of the universe had almost completely dissipated. Without the continuous influx of energy from all directions, the energy vortex centered on Russell slowly dissipated. Russell took a deep breath, like a dragon sucking in water, swallowing the last few streams of energy into the luminous white space, converting them into attribute points. Slowly opening his eyes, Russell looked at Nar, his heart filled with emotion. Truly, a man cannot get rich without unexpected wealth, and a horse cannot get fat without night grazing. During his journey through the abyss of the universe, Russell had absorbed trillions of units of energy, converting them into over 300,000 points for his divine body. Although still in battle, Russell could no longer concern himself with Nar and his symbiotic dragons. With a thought, he opened his attribute panel name, Russell, Ancient God, Attribute Points. 1, 1557, 4396, 4399 Divine Body. 11,111 Talent 1 Energy Absorption, can absorb any energy and convert it into attribute points. Talent 2 Attribute Transfer, attribute points can be used to enhance the divine body. Description, none. Deep blue, add points. A luminous white space opened, and a massive amount of luminous white energy surged out, washing over Russell's divine body, faintly gleaming with a divine silver luster. Under the wash of luminous white energy, Russell's divine body strength soared rapidly, and terrifying power continuously surged from the depths of his divine body, permeating his limbs and bones. Russell felt as if his divine body had broken free of the shackles of the universe, and everything around him seemed to emit a faint sense of repulsion, as if trying to expel him from the abyss of the universe to an outer cosmic realm. As he added attribute points and his divine body continued to strengthen, this sense of repulsion grew stronger and stronger. Finally, Russell had no choice but to devote most of his mind to controlling his divine body to resist this repulsion. Damn it, whether he liked it or not, Nar had to admit that he had been tricked. It turned out that this mage had not absorbed the primordial dark energy before, but had transferred it to another space. Now, after transformation, it was beginning to be truly absorbed. But he had clearly sealed off the abyss of the universe, so how had this mage transferred a primordial dark energy? More importantly, why could this mage convert primordial dark energy? This question filled Nar with both doubt and a growing sense of dread, the fear of the unknown. But he had to stop the mage from continuing to convert and absorb primordial dark energy. Forcibly suppressing his unease, Nar, along with the symbiotic dragons, launched an attack on Russell. The dragons danced wildly, yet in a chaotic yet orderly fashion, surrounding Russell and unleashing their breath. Countless dragon breaths streaked across the void, deepening the darkness and making the empty space even more somber. In the abyss of the universe, darkness once again reigned supreme. However, all the darkness stopped short of Russell. Nar, the symbiotic god, wielding a long sword, stealthily approached Russell amidst the dark breaths. He raised his sword, aiming for Russell's neck, attempting to decapitate him. Nar acted silently before striking, but the force of his sword strike was earth-shattering. The sword flashed, leaving a black line stretching tens of thousands of meters, a void rift created by the collapse of the cosmic abyss. Clang, a crisp sound rang out, and nothing happened. Nar's highly anticipated sneak attack, aimed at Russell's neck, failed to penetrate his defenses. It couldn't even budge Russell in the slightest. The impact of the blade vanished the moment it struck him. The void rift that had spread with his sword was also blocked by Russell's body, forced to bypass him and move behind him. Crack crack. This section of the cosmic abyss was torn apart by Nar's sword, falling into the void rift under the pull of the blade. A pulling force also emanated from the void rift, but Russell remained seated, unaffected. From afar, he looked like a silver flash in the dark abyss. Gradually, silver light seeped from Russell's body, dyeing his divine form a pure silver. Furthermore, this silver light began to spread uncontrollably. Even the void, devoid of any medium, could not stop it. A silver light swept across, dyeing everything in its color. Whether it was the backdrop of the cosmic abyss, the symbiotic dragon, or the symbiotic god Nar, or even more than just the cosmic abyss. Beyond the cosmic abyss, this silver light traversed time and space, spreading outwards. The silver light flashed past a universe Russell and Nar had passed through on their journey to the cosmic abyss. The robot with 6 gems embedded in its chest stopped, lost in thought. After a moment, it changed direction, randomly choosing a universe, no longer following Russell and Nar. The silver light flashed, illuminating for a moment a void, lifeless universe seemingly plunged into eternal night. A supreme sorcerer, kneeling dejectedly on a rock, suddenly looked up and cried out, "God, help me!" The silver light flashed again, and in a flame dimension, which had been closed off for many days and was preparing to lift the blockade, the demon saw something from beyond the dimension for the first time in a long time. Their king, as if reacting to a sudden shock, immediately canceled the plan to lift the blockade, intending to lead the flame dimension on a new round of wandering. Perhaps it was a fleeting moment, perhaps a long time. Russell gradually became familiar with this omnipresent sense of repulsion, seemingly emanating from the universe. His mind returned to its normal state, and he checked his attribute panel. Name, Russell. Attribute points: 1890-7796-4399, Divine Body. 333,333, Talent 1, Energy Absorption, can absorb any energy and convert it into attribute points. Talent 2, Attribute Transfer, attribute points can be used to enhance the Divine Body. Description: driven by a slightly mischievous sense of humor, Russell increased his Divine Body to 333,333 and then stopped. On one hand, he needed to save some attribute points for later. On the other hand, there were very few opponents he couldn't defeat with his roster strength. Without points, he couldn't win. With points, he probably still wouldn't win. Looking at the two question marks on the attribute panel, although there were no explanations, his transcendent perception provided the answer. When his Divine Body surpassed 100,000 points, his life level also surpassed that of an ancient god, reaching a certain indescribable and undefinable realm. He needed to find something to complete the definition. An abstract entity? Like human organs providing specific functions. Does it need to provide some natural function for the universe, becoming an indispensable part of it? Russell asked himself. Then, Beyond Perception gave the answer: it can be, and it cannot be. It can be, and it cannot be? What does that mean? Russell pondered. He believed in the feedback from Beyond Perception, but this feedback was too enigmatic, too mystical. Reluctantly, Russell could only put the question aside for now. He would make a plan later when he had the opportunity to encounter some abstract entities, the true gods of the Marvel Universe. Chapter 240 From God to Prisoner. Russell snapped out of his daze and found the symbiote god Nar still in his slashing stance, his long sword frozen at his neck. A look of terror slowly appeared on Nar's face, as if time had stood still. But this was not the case. While Nar was utterly incompetent and disgraced as a god, he was still an undisputed deity, the Lord of the Abyss, transcending time and space, the primordial god of darkness. It wasn't that time had frozen, rather, Russell's thought process far surpassed Nar's, making Nar's every move appear static to him. His talent, energy absorption, activated, and like a whale sucking in water, the energy within Nar, the symbiote dragon, and the other abyss creatures was drawn towards Russell. After absorbing the energy, Russell waved his hand again, as if wiping a blackboard with a towel, wiping away their bodies one by one, leaving only tiny particles scattered in the wind. Nar received special treatment. Russell directly devoured every single particle of his entire body into the luminous white space. For Nar, the confrontation with Russell had just happened recently. But for Russell, it felt like an eternity had passed. His initial excitement had worn off, and he just wanted to end the battle quickly. This wouldn't do. With a long sigh, Russell realized that at his current thought speed, he couldn't survive in the universe without suppressing it. The time it took for him to say a word and wait for a reply was enough for him to do countless things and completely forget the conversation. Russell had no choice but to suppress his thought speed, reducing it back to its original level. Then he discovered that Null had resurrected. The primordial dark energy in the abyss of the universe, which he had previously completely absorbed, had resurfaced in this brief moment. This small amount of primordial dark energy began to reconstruct Null's body and consciousness. Although Null's body was still weak and his consciousness hadn't yet awakened, Russell had no doubt that after hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of years, one day, Null's body would be reborn, and his consciousness would awaken. He's really hard to kill? At this moment, Russell gained a deeper understanding of primordial dark energy. He had initially thought it referred to quantity, but it turned out to be more than just quantity. It could also automatically replenish itself. How about blocking the energy source of the cosmic abyss? No, that's no different from sealing Nar. Sealing him directly would be much easier. How about trying to destroy the cosmic abyss? Thinking this, Russell felt a surge of excitement. It would be a perfect opportunity to test his current destructive power on the cosmic abyss. Russell punched into the void, unleashing a torrent of silver divine power that spread wildly in a lightning-like pattern, relentlessly destroying the void of the cosmic abyss and the dark matter structure within it. Crack! Crack! The cosmic abyss began to crumble from the point of impact, revealing numerous thick void cracks. When the void cracks spread throughout the entire cosmic abyss, it shattered like a bubble, collapsing completely with a snap. The fragments were swallowed by the void cracks, drifting aimlessly in the turbulent flow of space-time. Some would fall into the multiverse, embedding themselves within the universe to become other dimensions. Some would fall into the super vortex, becoming new dimensions. Or simply become garbage. Some will be flung out of the super vortex, heading to the neutral space at the final boundary of the Marvel Universe, or even beyond the neutral space, completely leaving the Marvel Universe. Rumble. The cosmic abyss shatters, a whale falls and all things are born. If nothing unexpected happens, a turmoil sweeping across half the multiverse is about to occur. But this is temporarily irrelevant to Russell. Russell looked at Nar and discovered that even with the destruction of the cosmic abyss, his resurrection progress hadn't stopped. It was just that the speed of gathering primordial dark energy had slowed down, thus slowing his resurrection. Good heavens! As long as the cosmic abyss exists and the primordial dark energy is inexhaustible, he is immortal. The key is the inexhaustible primordial dark energy. The indestructibility of the cosmic abyss was just a bluff. The destruction of the cosmic abyss only removes the source, losing a fixed resurrection point and slowing down the resurrection speed. Primordial dark energy, however, exists in varying amounts in every corner of the multiverse and is constantly being generated in minute quantities, making it impossible for it to be completely depleted. What a fortunate birth! Russell couldn't help but sigh. After careful observation, he discovered that after losing the ability to gather primordial dark energy from the abyss of the universe, Nar's resurrection speed plummeted to less than 1/10,000th of its original speed. This was hardly believable. While the resurrection speed was slower and could be sealed, the process couldn't be completely stopped, meaning he couldn't be completely killed. Ultimately, the sealing method was still necessary. Rather than that, perhaps. Russell's lips curled into a smile. A different approach. Wasn't the resurrected Nar a natural gatherer of primordial dark energy? However, before that, he needed to ask him something. Although this ancient god was a bit weak, he was at least ancient enough and shouldn't lack knowledge. Russell's finger pierced Nar, a shimmering white light waking him from his weakened state. Nar slowly opened his eyes, seeing the shattered abyss of the universe around him. After a moment of silence, he suddenly grinned maliciously and roared at Russell before him, "I am the Lord of the Abyss. The primordial god of darkness. I am immortal. You think you can kill me? I am immortal." Russell chuckled. He was certainly tough. A shimmering white substance surged forth, and the replica of Nar's black death sword formed a sharp blade, drawing Nar into it and inscribing runes to create a unique spell. "Are you going to spit poison at me? How drastic is your fall? From god to prisoner, ah! Damn mage, you deserve to die," Nar roared again. "I never obey, I never fall. As long as life exists, as long as time has meaning, I will not give up." "Sorry, time has no meaning for you now," Russell smiled, introducing the sort of light he had created to Nar. "This sort of light will absorb the primal dark energy you gather and transform it into another kind of energy, attacking you from time to time. As long as this sword remains intact, you will be unable to absorb primal dark energy from the outside world. Furthermore, you will not even be able to fall asleep." Russell lowered his voice and said coldly, "What awaits you is eternal torment." Russell changed the subject and added, "However, we don't seem to have any deep-seated hatred. If you do me a favor, I don't mind forgiving your previous offense and not disturbing you while you sleep." If he could kill Nar, he wouldn't mind doing it. Firstly, there was a grudge, and secondly, Nar wasn't a good person. Eternal torment was unnecessary without a deep-seated hatred. Nar remained silent, feeling that this experience was an undeserved disaster. If he could turn back time, he would definitely restrain himself, not be so talkative, and even less so stubborn. "Speak, what do you want me to do? Answer me one question, what is a god? A true god?" Chapter 241 Discussing gods while brewing tea. Russell suddenly became interested, snapped his fingers, and with a crisp crack, the surrounding environment began to rapidly change. In a short while, he crossed a cosmic barrier and returned to Earth 404. Using the silver card given to him by Kelson, the current COO of the Kamar Taj Corporation, Russell went to a Chinese restaurant specializing in breakfast and tea and booked a private room. After ordering tea and snacks, Russell took out the sword of light and, with a flick of his wrist, released Nal from it. The tea and discussion of the gods officially began. Nal watched Russell go through the entire process quietly, puzzled. "Master, why are you doing this?" Russell smiled. "TN discussion of the gods, TN discussion of the gods." The symbiotic god now was puzzled. After a moment's thought, although he didn't know the idiom discussing heroes over wine, he roughly guessed Russell's meaning. Nal sat down opposite Russell. Although he wasn't familiar with human etiquette and the human food didn't quite suit his taste, thinking about how long he would be sealed away, he still picked up his teacup and took a sip. Every universe, every planet, and every civilization has its own unique pantheon, such as the Norse, Greek, and Egyptian pantheons on Earth. They often possess immortality or lifespans exceeding ordinary life, as well as magical power, and are known as the new gods. Mage, could these be considered true gods? While waiting for Russell's reply, Nar wasn't idle either. After becoming somewhat familiar with using chopsticks, he kept piling them on, one meatball after another, then one shrimp dumpling, ruining the ambience of tea drinking. Russell didn't mind, taking a sip of tea and savoring it for a moment before shaking his head. "They're too weak. They don't qualify as true gods." Nar swallowed his food hastily and asked, "What about the ancient gods?" "They were the first gods born on the eternal heart, Earth 616, far more powerful than the new gods." "Are they true gods?" Russell thought for a moment, then shook his head again. "While the ancient gods are generally more powerful than the new gods, the God-Eater War nearly destroyed their race, killing the vast majority of its members. They're too easily killed. They don't qualify as true gods." Nar finished his tea in one gulp and laughed heartily. "And me? The embodiment of the abyss and darkness, immortal and indestructible, impossible to truly kill. Am I a true god?" Russell nodded, then shook his head. "While you're difficult to truly kill, you're too weak. You possess some characteristics of a god, but you're not a true god yet." "I'm weak?" Nar reflexively asked, seeing Russell nod matter-of-factly. Nar tried to defend himself, that he was simply not at his peak. Not truly weak, but he only opened his mouth. Although his defeat was compounded by several unfavorable factors, the Black Death Sword in his hand wasn't the original. The original Black Death Sword had been stolen after he was injured in battle. He had been inadvertently taken away from the symbiote army by Russell and hadn't been able to don the complete symbiote armor. His battle strategy was flawed. But a loss is a loss, and explanations are meaningless. More importantly, the mage before him, after absorbing the primordial dark energy from the cosmic abyss, unleashed combat power far exceeding his own. He, as the embodiment of the abyss and darkness, couldn't truly condense the power of the abyss and darkness. But this mage had done it. If it weren't for the fact that this mage's energy properties were completely unrelated to the abyss and darkness, he would even suspect that this mage was the master, the creator, of the abyss and darkness. After a long silence, drinking cup after cup of tea, Nar said, "What about the abstract entities of the universe? They possess both the characteristics of gods you described and are powerful enough. Are they true gods?" Russell remained silent. This was exactly what he wanted to know. These abstract cosmic entities, considered part of the multiverse and embodiments of cosmic rules, are they true gods? Looking at Nal, the embodiment of the abyss and darkness before him, Russell had a sudden realization. Eternity, infinity, death, annihilation. They are an important part of the Marvel Universe, the true gods of the Marvel Universe. For the Marvel Universe, the rules they symbolize are more important than the rules Nal symbolizes. They are also more powerful than Nal. Russell nodded in agreement with Nal, but another question lingered in his mind. Should I become such a god? If I become such a god, what am I the embodiment of? Energy? Through the mass-energy equivalence equation, mass and energy can be interconverted. It seems pretty good. But his talent doesn't seem to be just about energy. Russell opened his attribute panel, focusing on his two talent attributes. Talent 1, Energy Absorption, can absorb any energy and convert it into attribute points. Talent 2, Attribute Transfer, attribute points can be used to enhance the divine body. As his life level continued to evolve, he had long discovered that his Talent 1, Energy Absorption, had many additional functions. It seemed like a skill that only helped improve physical attributes, but it was unexpectedly useful in combat. At this stage, he could manipulate almost any form of energy within the multiverse. Absorption, transformation, and release were all effortless for him. He even concealed the most basic and core characteristic of his character panel, enhancement. He perfectly utilized energy for limitless enhancement, concentrating all energy into a single individual to unleash even greater combat power. This was true power concentrated in one person. Russell turned his gaze back to the attribute panel. The 2 question marks from before had disappeared. Name, Russell, godlike. Description, power concentrated in one person, surpassing all, transcending all. With his doubts resolved, Russell smiled and chatted with Nal about other ancient gods, ancient races, and abstract entities of the universe. Although the symbiotic god Nal wasn't a social butterfly, spending most of his time either in slumber, imprisoned, or waging war, his knowledge, accumulated over countless years, remained profound. The 2 chatted amiably, their tea-drinking discussion of the gods lasting a long time, mostly Russell asking questions, Nal answering. The symbiotic god remarked that he had thoroughly enjoyed this last meal, after drinking plenty of tea, eating a lot of breakfast, and hearing many stories. Russell smiled and drew the sword of light. Nar, the symbiotic god, Russell said, drawing the sword of light. Is there anything else you'd like to drink or eat? After you've finished, you must return. Nar shook his head and consciously entered the sword of light. He wasn't particularly attached to food or drink. He simply couldn't resist the temptation of getting something for free. He was willing to answer Russell's question because of Russell's promise, not to disturb his slumber. Mage, perhaps when I wake up, I will be free again. But by then, I wonder how many years you will have turned to dust, as a noble, immortal being. Nar couldn't help but be stubborn before falling asleep. Even in the multiverse, there are more than one iteration. He believed that this mage would die sooner or later, and his seal would be broken sooner or later. Simple imprisonment, no matter how long, was nothing more than a long slumber. Russell simply smiled at this. To be honest, he was quite envious of Nar's immortality. His tolerance for error was maximized. Chapter 242 The gears of fate begin to turn. In the desolate ruins of the cosmic abyss, magical sparks flickered. A golden portal opened, and a figure draped in a black cloak emerged. This should be the source of that strange power from before, but why is it now a wasteland? The black-clad figure murmured to himself. He was none other than Stephen Strange, the Dark Lord, whose power had swept across the multiverse and desolate worlds during Russell's ascension. In his world, he hadn't lost his hands in the car accident, but he had lost his beloved Christine Palmer. After becoming the Sorcerer Supreme, he had repeatedly tried to travel back in time to save Christine, but each time he failed. Then, the Ancient One split him into 2 personalities. Unable to relinquish Christine, he began devouring magical creatures and absorbing dark energy. Day after day, year after year, he grew incredibly powerful, successfully merging with the other personality and saving Christine. His act of saving Christine shattered the absolute point in time, plunging the universe into oblivion. He could neither save Christine nor preserve the universe. He could only mourn alone in that desolate cosmos. Until that strange energy swept across, his universe underwent a slight change. To find the cause of this change, to seek a way to save his universe, he traveled upstream, finding the source of the strange energy. But what happened here? That strange power has vanished. Looking at the empty, fragmented abyss of the universe, Black Strange felt a pang of disappointment. He had rushed as fast as he could, but he was still a step too late. Fortunately, he placed his hands in front of his chest, forming a mudra, and activated the power of the Time Stone. The eye of Agamotto on Black Strange's chest spun rapidly, and the green Time Stone appeared, emitting bursts of light. The green light, symbolizing the power of time, swept across, and everything around him froze instantly. But this was not what Black Strange wanted. He wanted to reverse time and go back to see what had happened. However, the space-time here was a chaotic mess, completely disordered and fragmented, beyond repair. Damn it, seeing that the time magic had failed, Black Strange cursed himself for being a step too slow, missing a possibility of saving the universe, and couldn't help but roar in anger. With a deafening roar, a surge of energy erupted from his body, spreading out in a ring. The remnants of the cosmic abyss along its path were shattered into smaller pieces, and the void rifts were temporarily suppressed. Disheartened, the Dark Strange didn't want to return immediately. He randomly chose a direction and began drifting through the multiverse. On Earth 404, after Russell had his last meal with the symbiotic god Cal, he sealed him away again. Checking the time, Russell discovered that more than 10 days had passed since he left Earth 404 to confront Cal. Fortunately, although he had been away from the Asgardian battlefield for over 10 days, nothing unexpected had happened. The Russell brand pager he had given Gwen for protection remained silent. Let's go to Asgard and see. I wonder what stage the war is at. Malekith is dead, and the Dark Elves are leaderless. I wonder if this war will end sooner. Maybe I can even catch the feast." Muttering to himself, Russell opened a portal and quietly infiltrated Asgard. In a dead-end corner of an Asgardian street, Russell, dressed as a bard, emerged. He quickly attracted the attention of many Asgardians. His attire, demeanor, and mannerisms were completely out of place among the crowd. "Hey, buddy," a shopkeeper called out to Russell, whispering a warning. "Odin has ordered martial law and war preparedness throughout the country, prohibiting all entertainment. If you go out telling stories now, not only will no one listen and you won't earn any money, but you might also be arrested as a spy by the guards. Go home quickly." "Okay, thanks for the reminder, buddy," Russell readily agreed, taking the opportunity to inquire about the war situation. The shopkeeper gave Russell a brief overview of the battle, urging him to hurry if he wanted to buy anything, or else go home and hide. After Malekith's death, the war did not end quickly. Instead, its scale and intensity escalated. Now, both the Asgardian warriors and the warriors of the Four-Nation Alliance were bloodthirsty. This was completely different from Russell's prediction that the war would end quickly. "Forget it, let's ask Gwen and the others for details." Finding that he couldn't get any more information from the shopkeeper, Russell simply went directly to Gwen and the others. Malekith, the leader of the Dark Elves, died on the battlefield of Vanaheim, so it's normal for the Dark Elves to go mad. But Laufey, the Frost Giant King, Surtur, the Fire Giant King, and Havanen, the Angel Queen, are all still alive and well. What's wrong with them going mad? Yesterday, another squad of fire giants tried to infiltrate Asgard and set it on fire, but luckily the guards discovered them in time, Loki complained in the Asgardian palace. Odin had stopped interfering, and Thor was only responsible for charging into battle. During this time, the heavy responsibility of coordinating the Asgardian army had been on his shoulders, and he had accumulated a lot of resentment. "Loki, we must find a way to end this war as soon as possible. The people of the 9 kingdoms have already shed too much blood." On the throne, Odin spoke tremblingly, his eyes lifeless. Loki rolled his eyes upon hearing this. His father, getting old, was becoming increasingly senile. If there were a way to quickly defeat the combined forces of the 4 great kingdoms, he would have suggested it long ago. There was no need for Odin to urge him. "Thor, Loki. The gears of fate have begun to turn, I see it." Odin seemed oblivious to Loki's glare, continuing to mutter to himself. His gaze was vacant, yet profound, lost in thought. "Father, what do you see?" "I see the 9 realms in ruins, the gods falling. Heimdall and Malekith are just the first. Afterwards, Laufey, Surtur, Havanen, and me, Thor, and Loki, we won't escape. We will all face death and never return to Valhalla. Father, my brother and I will surely win. This war will only be a great victory for Asgard." Thor softly comforted him after hearing Odin's rambling words. He then gave Loki a wink, signaling him to join in comforting Odin. "Father, my brother is right. He and I will defeat the Dark Elves, the War Angels, the Fire Giants, and the Frost Giants, just like you and Grandfather." "No. They are not our enemies," Odin suddenly rallied. "The beings of the 9 realms are not our enemies are." Before he could finish, Odin staggered and collapsed to the side, fainting on his throne. Father, God King." In a flurry of panic, Thor and Loki took Odin away to rest, entrusting him to the care of Queen Frigga. Chapter 243. There is nothing new under the sun. In Odin's quarters within the main hall of the Golden Palace, Odin, lying on his bed, suddenly frowned, his body trembling slightly, as if he were dreaming of something terrifying. "My king." Frigga, the queen of the gods, who was tending to Odin, immediately noticed his unusual state. She stood up and gently touched Odin's forehead. A crystalline light emanated from her hand, seeping into Odin's forehead to soothe his soul. However, it had little effect. Odin remained troubled. Suddenly, Odin opened his eyes abruptly, like a drowning person struggling to escape from the water, gasping for breath. "My king, what's wrong? Did you have another nightmare?" Frigga asked softly, her voice filled with worry. "No. This isn't a dream." Odin's voice was weak but firm. "I was almost there, just a little bit more." "Frigga, my king, what did you see?" Odin opened his mouth, then closed it again, saying nothing. He was afraid that if he spoke, mentioning those people, they would notice. "Is it that you can't tell me now?" Frigga asked, noticing Odin's strange reaction. Odin replied weakly, about to close his eyes and drift back to sleep. "Your Majesty, Don't force yourself, Frigga said with concern. I am the king of Asgard. Before he finished speaking, Odin fell into slumber again. But unlike his previous Odin slumber, this time the Odin power within him didn't subside. Instead, it began to increase again. At a rate far exceeding normal, it began to grow. Clearly, this was intentional on Odin's part. Father's body can no longer withstand the divine power within him, so why is the divine power still increasing so rapidly? Thor asked, seeing this. Asgardian strength increases with age, but Thor had never seen or heard of a case where Odin's body couldn't withstand the divine power at all. Frigga gave Thor a meaningful look, hesitated for a moment, and then decided to tell him the truth she knew. Your father absorbed the divine power of his two brothers when he was young. The growth rate of divine power within the Asgardian royal family far exceeds that of ordinary Asgardians. The growth rate of divine power within your father's body is 3 times that of the Asgardian royal family. Furthermore, he inherited the power of your grandfather Bor, your great-grandfather Buri, and other god kings. Couldn't father have relinquished some of his power? Thor asked. While Frigga's explanation could explain why Odin's body couldn't withstand the ever-increasing divine power, it couldn't explain why Odin didn't completely solve the problem, instead using the Odin's sleep, a superficial solution. Frigga shook her head and said, your father has his own reasons. He needs this power. This power that far surpasses that of ordinary Asgardian god kings. 1,000 years ago, father completely pacified the 9 realms. Is father too concerned about his reputation as the strongest being in the 9 realms, and therefore unwilling to relinquish his power? Thor expressed his incomprehension. Odin's power was already sufficient, why did he allow it to grow unchecked? Frigga shook her head without explaining further, only saying, trust your father. Then, Frigga dismissed Thor and Loki, telling them not to disturb Odin's slumber. I trust you too, my king. Inside Asgard, Thor and Loki walked side by side down the corridor, their spirits slightly low, having just left Odin's healing chamber. Father is right. We must resolve this war as soon as possible and restore peace to the 9 realms. Thor's voice broke the silence. He said in a deep voice, according to the latest news, not only have Vanaheim and Alfheim reignited their rebellion, but Nornheim and Rhea on the continent of Asgard are also stirring. If this war drags on any longer, there's no guarantee they won't also rebel. Loki frowned and said, should we send Balder, the god of light, to see Queen Karnilla of Norn and ask her what's going on? I've heard that their relationship is quite special. Perhaps we can persuade Karnilla to send troops to help us. Thor thought for a moment, then nodded and shook his head. We can try. But Loki, this is just a delaying tactic. Balder can persuade one Karnilla, but he can't persuade thousands upon thousands of Karnilla. As long as the war continues, the number of rebels, bandits, and raiders in the 9 realms will only increase. If the war continues to drag on, even if we eventually win, the 9 realms may never return to peace. Loki smiled helplessly. He also wanted to end the war as soon as possible, but defeating the combined forces of the 4 great nations was no easy task. Thor, war is a matter of national importance, concerning the lives of countless people and the survival of nations. It must be treated with utmost care and cannot be taken lightly. If we are defeated, not only will Asgard face annihilation, but the Vanir gods of Vanaheim and the mortals of Midgard will also suffer. This is not a matter of great importance, not a personal duel where a winner can be easily decided. Personal duel. Thor's eyes lit up slightly, and he slapped Loki's shoulder. Brother, good idea. We can challenge the leaders of the 4 great kingdoms' allied forces, and the defeated side will surrender. Thor, don't be naive. Loki slapped Thor's hand away, annoyed. War is not child's play. This war is very strange, unlike the suppression of rebellions in the past few hundred years. This time, it is a collective rebellion of frost giants, fire giants, dark elves, and angels. How will we know if we don't try? Thor shrugged, speaking casually. Loki, it's not just Asgard that's in rebellion. Jotunheim, Jotunheim, Muspelheim, and Heaven, they've launched the offensive, sending out their entire armies. Their territories are likely even more infested than Asgard's. We don't want to drag this out, but they might not want to either. Loki pondered for a moment, then nodded. All right, I'll have someone contact them and arrange a time to talk. With that, Loki casually summoned a guard on duty and ordered him to go and carry out the task. In a side hall of the Golden Palace, Odin had prepared a residence for Gwen and her party, the reinforcements from Midgard. Russell was currently walking within this palace. He sensed that Gwen and the others were inside. Besides the Golden Palace, this palace had several other names, the most famous of which was Valhalla. The walls of the Golden Palace were decorated with exquisite reliefs depicting the glorious deeds of the gods and warriors throughout Asgardian history. Walking along the corridor, Russell saw on these reliefs Thor's grandfather, Baul, and Odin defeating the Dark Elves and plunging the universe back into darkness. He saw Odin and two unnamed brothers defeating Surtur and seizing the eternal flame. He saw the heroic deeds of Baul, Odin, Thor, Loki, Heimdall, and others, all inscribed on this corridor. There was also Russell himself. Russell saw a relief depicting himself dominating Jotunheim for 10 days, forcing Laufey, the Frost Giant King, to submit. In the corners of the reliefs, there were small inscriptions introducing Russell's identity and life story. My deeds, as an outsider, are engraved here? And what's with this biography? So many ominous things, Russell muttered, realizing he had reached the end, arriving at the side hall where Gwen and her group were. Putting everything else aside, Asgard does a very good job of recording the glory of warriors. Steve Rogers, who happened to be in the corridor, chimed in. He was quite qualified to speak on this topic. He even had a personal exhibition hall in Brooklyn, New York. Russell, I heard that our battle against the Serpent of Terror and our defense of Asgard will be recorded. Hearing Russell and Steve's voices, Gwen emerged from the palace. I also heard that everyone whose name is recorded can choose whether to go to Valhalla in Asgard after death. In Valhalla, one can gain endless lifespan as a heroic spirit. Valhalla, Russell nodded. Valhalla was similar to the hell prepared for believers by various pantheons, except it was only for warriors, with a much higher entry threshold. The difference between the gods' hell and the dimensions of hell was that most hell were merely dimensional spaces within the universe. Only a few extremely powerful pantheons could dedicate a complete dimension as hell. Gwen, have you already decided where you want to be buried with me after you die? Russell teased. Gwen simply rolled her eyes. She already knew Russell wasn't subject to lifespan limitations. They'd known each other for years, and Russell hadn't changed a bit. He even had a way to help others extend their lifespan. Russell had previously asked her if she needed help freezing her body and stopping the aging process. Considering she was still young and had a chance to grow taller, Gwen declined Russell's help. By the way, Russell, where have you been all this time? You disappeared after fighting that Dark Elf leader Malekith and Vanaheim, Gwen asked. Although Russell wouldn't easily intervene, having a powerful figure behind her always gave her more confidence in battle. Russell, I found the person who provides Malekith with power, so I went to talk to him. Hearing this, Steve immediately asked, who is that person? The mastermind behind this war. Russell shrugged. He is Null, the symbiote god, the god of abyss and darkness born at the beginning of the 7th generation of the universe. I'm sorry, he can at most be considered a catalyst for this war, not the mastermind. Looking up at the Asgardian sky, Russell said meaningfully, once this war begins, it's like the unstoppable tide of history. Gwen frowned, annoyed. Russell, speak plainly. Simply put, this war was bound to happen sooner or later. Null, the symbiote god, just unintentionally pushed things along, accelerating the process. There's nothing new under the sun. Who can guarantee that what's happening now hasn't happened in the past? Not only Gwen, but the others who came out of the palace and into the corridor upon hearing this also had black lines appear on their foreheads. The first sentence was cryptic, and the second was equally cryptic. What difference does it make whether you say it or not? Russell, stop being a riddle maker, just say what you want to say. Wanda couldn't help but urge him on. Riddle makers were the most annoying thing. What has been done will be done again, what has been will be again. Heavenly secrets must not be revealed. Russell continued to ramble on, saying nonsensical things. It wasn't that he didn't want to speak, but this matter didn't have much to do with the people here. Things are accomplished by secrecy, and ruined by leaks. At this moment, the gods hidden behind the world tree had already turned their gaze to the 9 realms, though not many yet. Damn Russell. Seeing that Russell was still unwilling to speak openly, keeping everyone in suspense, Gwen couldn't help but take action. She jumped up, about to punch Russell in the head from above. Russell dodged to the side, catching the punch on his shoulder. Then he casually hugged the lunging Gwen, resting his chin on her head. Hey, Gwen, you're not trying to make me shorter, are you? It's not my fault you haven't grown much in the last 2 years. Feeling Russell's chin bobbing on her head, Gwen struggled free and complained, Russell, Stop messing up my hair. Tap tap tap. Footsteps approached, and soon Thor and Loki emerged from around the corner, walking towards the group. As soon as they got closer, Thor greeted everyone warmly, giving each of them a light hug. I heard some noise over here and came to check. I didn't expect to see you here, Russell. Russell and Thor gave each other a polite hug. Yeah, I recently went on a trip to another universe and just got back. Russell, could you explain in more detail what you just said about this war? Releasing Russell, Thor asked curiously. It was Russell's voice that had drawn him and Loki over. Russell hesitated, unsure whether to tell Thor. The main participants in this war were the Asgardian gods and the giants. Theoretically, Thor, as the current second in command of Asgard, has the right to know this. Seeing Russell's hesitation, Thor waved his hand and complained, "What's wrong with us today? Father, Mother, and you, Russell, have all become riddle makers?" Hearing Thor's complaint, Russell felt relieved. Since Odin hadn't told Thor, why should he? Glancing at the sky again, Russell guessed that what he and Odin couldn't say was the same thing, Ragnarok. The end of the Asgardian gods and giants. It was also the feast of the gods behind the world tree. Turning his gaze away, Russell smiled and said, "Thor, since King Odin won't tell you, he must have his reasons, so it's not convenient for me to tell you either." "You know what Father wanted to say?" Loki asked in surprise. Russell hadn't seen his father recently, had he? How did he know what his father wanted to say but hadn't said? Russell nodded. "If I'm not mistaken, the King of Gods and I are thinking of the same thing. I wonder if the King of Gods is free? I'd like to pay him a visit to discuss important matters. My father has just entered a deep slumber and is probably too busy to see you right now, Russell. However, I can speak with my mother, and once my father awakens, he will summon you," Thor said. "All right," Russell nodded, his eyes narrowing slightly. "The gods behind the world tree, please don't disappoint me. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels." Chapter 244 The Challenge, Russell and Odin's Scheme. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, Thor and Loki hurriedly departed. A guard reported that one side of the four great kingdoms had agreed to negotiations, and the leaders of both sides initiated a video conference. In the Great Hall of the Council of the Gods in Graziheim, Thor and Loki rushed in, greeted the Asgardian High Command, including Balder, the god of light, and Sif, the goddess of fertility, and then ordered a connection to the leaders of the allied forces of the four great kingdoms. A burst of multicolored light spread out, transforming the scene within the palace hall. Moments later, several sets of tables and chairs appeared out of thin air, laden with various fruits. Then, projections of the fire giant Surtur, the frost giant King Laufey, the angel Queen Havanen, Queen Cinder, and an unnamed dark elf materialized. Laufey's eyes flashed with doubt upon seeing the fruits on the table. Slightly curious, he picked up a fruit resembling an apple, took a bite, chewed, and swallowed. Feeling the realistic sensation on his taste buds and in his stomach, a look of surprise appeared on his face. Although it was merely a projection, it possessed a real tactile quality and could even perform actions like eating and drinking, as if the real entity had descended. When did Asgard acquire such technology? Laufey was surprised, but feigned disdain. Frost spread across his hand, freezing the fruit in his hand into a block of ice, which he casually tossed towards Thor. Fancy and impractical. It seems Asgard has been too peaceful for too long and has become corrupt. Odin's son, you didn't call us here to show off these technologies meant to please nobles but utterly useless, did you? Snap. Loki caught the ice block Laufey threw for Thor, crushing it into pieces with a forceful squeeze, and said meaningfully, "Whether this is impractical or not, I think you, King Laufey of the Frost Giants, should know." HMPH, Laufey snorted coldly, remaining silent. He believed this projection technology must have some limitations. For example, it could only be used in certain special places in Asgard, otherwise, Asgard would have used it on the front lines long ago. But regardless, Asgard had subtly flexed its muscles against the allied forces of the four great nations. "Alright, King Laufey the Frost Giant, let's hear what this little boy wants from us in this negotiation." Queen Zund looked at Thor and licked her lips. Thor had been displaying remarkable prowess on the battlefield recently, his valiant fighting captivating her. if it weren't for the fact that they belonged to opposing factions. King Laufey the Frost Giant, Surtur the Fire Giant, Queen Zend, the Angel Queen, and this Dark Elf, Thor said in a deep voice, his gaze sweeping over the 5 attendees. I've invited you all here to discuss ending this war, end this war, the Angel Queen sneered, drawing her longsword and smashing the table before her, scattering fruit everywhere. It's simple. Once I destroy Asgard and annihilate the Aesir, this war will naturally end. Insolence. Hearing the Angel Queen's words, the gods behind Thor roared in anger. Insolence? I will be insolent. What can you do about it? The Angel Queen coldly retorted, then stopped responding to the Asgardian gods' angry shouts. She was a queen, it wouldn't be beneath her to argue with these people. Seeing this, Thor raised his hand, stopping the gods behind him. Once the gods fell silent, Loki stepped forward, his sincerity tinged with a hint of threat. Angel Queen, this war has already caused heavy casualties among the races of the 9 realms. If the fighting continues, I fear only devastation and bloodshed will ensue. Even worse, the 9 realms may crumble. The 9 realms are one. I think no one wants to see such a situation. The 9 realms are one? When Odin banished heaven, he didn't care whether the 9 realms were one. Now it's Asgard's turn to face annihilation. What, now the 9 realms are one? The Angel Queen laughed angrily upon hearing Loki's words, retorting sarcastically. Laufey and Queen Cinder, however, focused on something else. The 9 realms crumbling? Now that the Rainbow Bridge is destroyed, what can Asgard use to destroy the 9 realms? Perhaps they still have a trump card? Loki frowned, unable to refute the Angel Queen's accusations. The negotiations reached a stalemate. Just then, a frail, aged voice broke the silence. Havens, I never imagined this would cause you such resentment for so long. Odin, it's good you're still alive. I will make you watch Asgard crumble before your eyes, feel the pain I felt then. Only then can I quell my hatred. The newcomer was Odin, who walked slowly, leaning on the spear Gungnir. Upon seeing Odin, especially the spear in his hand, Loki frowned slightly. Then, thoughtfully, his brow relaxed, and he remained silent. A wizard helps a wizard. Although Loki didn't know why Russell was impersonating Odin, he wouldn't expose him. Seeing Odin, the Angel Queen's old and new grudges surged, and she gritted her teeth. Russell ignored the Angel Queen's curses, only looking at Laufey and Surtur, his tone weak, calm, and firm. This war must end as soon as possible, no matter what. Otherwise, the 9 realms will face annihilation. Laufey and Surtur narrowed their eyes. The same words, spoken by Odin and Loki, carried vastly different weight. Odin's tone was devoid of any threat, nor did he offer any evidence. Laufey and Surtur were somewhat convinced, their expressions growing serious. After all, this was the man who had once defeated them. Suddenly, Surtur had a flash of inspiration and blurted out, Ragnarok, Ragnarok. Russell nodded. Ha, Laufey laughed, his seriousness fading, replaced by sarcasm. Odin, you're really getting senile. You actually believe that absurd prophecy, fabricated by some bard to amuse the world? I saw it. Faced with Laufey's skepticism, Russell simply uttered 3 words. This simple sentence did not earn Laufey's trust. Laufey only felt more strongly that Odin was getting old and senile. Odin, defeating someone like you is truly pointless. Russell remained silent. Odin had only summoned him for help, not told him how to explain things in this situation, and he wasn't good with words. So, the Rainbow Bridge has been repaired. If you don't agree to truce, I will activate it and destroy Jotunheim, Muspelheim, Jotunheim, and Heaven, Russell said coldly, a blatant threat to Laufey, Surtur, Queen Cinder, the Angel Queen, and the 5 Dark Elf extras. Odin, even if you destroy our homeland, we will not submit. We will only retaliate in kind, destroy Asgard. Surtur drew the Twilight Sword and slammed it into the ground, the eternal fire above his head burning even brighter. A terrifying aura erupted, and the special projection space formed by Asgardian technology shook violently, nearly shattering. In an instant, the atmosphere within the palace froze, both sides on the verge of war. Only Russell chuckled inwardly. Let's change the terms. This war will be a holy war, with each side sending a 50-man elite squad. Their victory or defeat will determine the outcome of the war. Asgard won't use the Rainbow Bridge, Laufey asked. Asgard won't use the Rainbow Bridge, Russell promised. This, Laufey, Surtur, and Queen Cinder exchanged glances, feeling they had a significant advantage. Even if Malekith were to suffer a crushing defeat and die, their side would still have 4 top-tier warriors, while Asgard would only have 1.5, so Garo Loki, in small-scale battles, they would hold an absolute advantage. Alright, I agree, Laufey, Surtur, and Queen Cinder said in unison. The Angel Queen's eyes flickered, somewhat dissatisfied but not objecting. Her ideal scenario would be a large-scale war, inflicting as many casualties as possible on the Asgardians. However, after Malekith's death, she had no allies in the coalition and sometimes had to compromise. Alright, I agree too, seeing that Laufey, Surtur, Queen Cinder, and the Angel Queen all agreed, Odin nodded in satisfaction. They all ignored the Dark Elf extra. In that case, let's agree to fight in 3 days at the Vigrid Plains. No, we can't fight in Asgard, Laufey retorted. Since it's a major battle, it should be fair. I suggest we fight in Midgard, Earth. What did you say? Are you implying that we Asgardians would sabotage the battle? The gods were furious. Laufey's words were undoubtedly an insinuation that Asgard would manipulate the battlefield. How? Laufey sneered, ignoring the gods, his gaze fixed intently on Russell. Although the dragons were overwhelming him and he couldn't think of a reason to lose, he wouldn't be careless. Laufey, Surtur whispered, feeling that the battlefield didn't matter. Queen Cinder and the Angel Queen felt the same way. In fact, they thought Asgard would be better. The battlefield would be set up in Asgard after the Holy War. If Asgard refused to acknowledge the victory, they could launch a coordinated attack from within and without, taking advantage of Asgard's leaderless state to conquer it. Seeing the reactions of his teammates, Laufey could only explain in a low voice, Asgard also has a powerful mage from Midgard named Russell. He possesses terrifying area of effect spells. Abandoning the terrain might allow this mage to turn the tide. Setting the battlefield in Midgard will restrict his movements, crippling him. Hearing Laufey's words, Surtur and the other two's expressions shifted slightly. Although they felt Laufey was making a mountain out of a molehill, they didn't press further and instead supported him. Alright, Russell nodded with a strange expression, readily agreeing. See you in Midgard. Laufey uttered these harsh words, interrupting the projection and leaving, intending to head to Midgard to set up the battlefield. After all, the agreement was only to set up the battlefield in Midgard, not to specify a particular location. He planned to preemptively set up the battlefield in a mortal city, further restricting the mage named Russell in Midgard. The other 4 then departed. Father, why did you agree to let them place the battlefield in Midgard? This will surely cause. Thor was interrupted by Loki's push before he could finish. Loki, you? Loki suppressed a laugh, ignoring Thor, and simply waved for the gods to leave. Only after the gods had left did he finally burst into laughter. He, ha ha ha, although he didn't know what Loki was laughing at, Thor joined in. Seeing this, Loki laughed even louder, simultaneously summoning the eternal spear Gungnir. Thor, look at this, Gungnir, and what's that in his hand? Loki pointed to Russell. Gungnir? Why are there 2 Gungnirs? Oh, I see. Loki, you impersonated father to make Laufey and Surtur not dare to underestimate you. Thor finally understood. Remembering how Odin had gifted Gungnir, the Spear of Eternity, to Loki during the battle against the Serpent of Terror, Thor realized that the Odin before him wasn't their real father, but rather a magical disguise. Thor hugged Loki tightly, laughing, "You're something else, little brother, it's me." A flash of light, and Russell revealed his true form. Thor, how, it's you, Russell, the King of Gods sent me, Russell explained. Not long after Thor and Loki left, Odin awoke again and, learning of Russell's request, summoned him. After learning from the guards that Thor and Loki were negotiating with Laufey, Surtur, and others, Odin entrusted Russell to attend on their behalf, hoping to end the war as quickly as possible. Russell didn't reveal the deeper reasons to Thor and Loki. The entire Ragnarok was a conspiracy orchestrated by the ancient gods behind the world tree. A constantly repeating cycle. These ancient gods feed on Ragnarok, drawing energy from the event through the thread of fate to sustain their existence and grow stronger. In this cycle, Odin, for various reasons, became stronger than normal, finally realizing something was amiss. To break this cycle, Odin consulted various sources and finally found a solution. Severing the thread of fate connecting Ragnarok and the ancient gods would end the cycle. The first step was to find the thread of fate. Odin told Russell that their current state, so close to the finish line, was the best way to lure the gods behind the world tree interaction, thus bringing about Ragnarok. Only when they acted could Odin find the thread of fate that controlled the Norse gods. Then, With his accumulated power, he could unleash a final, devastating blow to sever the thread of fate. This was Odin's plan. Russell also had his own plan, to find the thread of fate, substitute his own energy for the energy of Ragnarok, and allow the ancient gods to absorb it, thus infiltrating their ranks. Once these ancient gods are infiltrated, they will be devoured in return. Russell's plan didn't conflict with Odin's. If Russell's plan succeeded, Odin wouldn't need to endure such immense energy, sacrificing his life to deliver the final blow and sever the threads of fate. Perhaps by releasing some of the energy and recuperating, Odin could live for another 1,000 years or so. Therefore, the two quickly reached a cooperative agreement. So, the Holy War is a plan between you and your father, Russell. Will you participate? Loki asked, sensing that Russell was still hiding something, but he didn't press the matter. Instead, he went straight to the point, asking if Russell would participate. Russell nodded. Strictly speaking, he wasn't going to participate in the war, but rather to control the situation. Chapter 245 Loki takes the blame. I have an agreement with the King of Gods. Although I will participate in this battle, I will not go all out. Our goal is not to defeat the four-nation alliance, Russell added after a moment's thought. He was worried that Thor and Loki, upon hearing that he would also participate, would think victory was assured and send only a few people. In that case, the battle would become one-sided, which would not fit his and Odin's fishing plan. A close contest, with gods or giants on the verge of falling, but always just a little short, would be the way to provoke the ancient gods behind the world tree and make it easier to lure them into intervening. Okay, I understand. Thor glanced at Russell thoughtfully, seemingly aware of something. But he said nothing, simply patted Russell on the shoulder, and strode outside. I'll go ahead to assemble the army and select warriors. We'll meet at the Rainbow Bridge at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Russell, Loki, tell Steve and the others that we can take them back to Earth tomorrow. The four great realms have a duel with Asgard against Earth. Earth needs them right now. Okay, I'll explain the situation to Steve and the others. Russell and Loki left the Council of Gods Hall together, heading towards the side hall of the Golden Palace. Loki, I suddenly remembered that the King of Gods instructed me to go and tell him as soon as I have any results. Back at the Golden Palace, Russell and Loki parted ways, heading towards Odin's infirmary. Loki was left alone to explain the battle to Steve and the others. Loki's lips twitched. He knew Russell and Odin were acting strangely and definitely had something on their minds. Loki shook his head and smiled helplessly, continuing towards the side hall of the Golden Palace. After Loki had gone some distance, Russell appeared, chuckled, and followed at a distance. Soon after, a suppressed argument erupted from the spot where Steve and his group had been staying. Why is the battlefield on Earth? Steve demanded, his voice laced with anger. A battle of 50 people wasn't large, but what if it involved 50 super soldiers? Especially since several of them were godlike super soldiers. Their battle could potentially turn Earth upside down, further disrupting the already fragile balance between superhumans and ordinary people. What if the losing side refused to acknowledge the defeat and started a full-scale war? It was Luffy, the Frost Giant King, who suggested it. We originally wanted to hold the battle on the Vigrid Plains. You agreed just because he suggested it. It wasn't me who agreed, it was. Before he could finish, Loki suddenly realized why Russell had left halfway. He knew there was a trap waiting for him. However, Thor, Loki, and the Asgardian gods hadn't taken this trap seriously. The reason was simple. In the eyes of the Asgardian gods, the mortal realm of Midgard had always been a vassal state of Asgard. Previously, Asgard had simply ignored it, allowing it to govern itself. But times had changed. Midgard was no longer the backward nation lacking technology and supernatural abilities. After a moment's hesitation, Loki still didn't implicate Russell. He was a prankster, not an ungrateful god. Saving a life, time magic, the space stone, any one of these could make countless people willingly take the blame. It was father's approval. In the end, Loki chose to betray his father. You know, as the old man gets older, his memory weakens. And he sometimes gets confused. Father might have been confused, thinking Earth was directly under Asgard's control. Here's what we'll do. Asgard will negotiate with the Earth government. Asgard will compensate for all the losses caused by this battle. Alright, Steve sighed, dissatisfied but helpless. He could only hope the battlefield was in the no man's land and that Asgard would win. Furthermore, the four-nation alliance wouldn't renege on their promise after a defeat. They would simply engage in a decisive battle on Earth. By the way, Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., Thor will activate the Rainbow Bridge and lead his army to Earth. You can all go to the Rainbow Bridge then and return together." Seeing the increasingly hostile expressions on everyone's faces after hearing this, Loki gave an awkward smile and fled. How infuriating. These Asgardians are just like the Dark Elves, they all look down on Earth. After Loki left, Natasha grew increasingly angry and couldn't help but speak up. "I used to find Thor and Loki quite agreeable, they look just like Earthlings, so I thought Asgardians must be different from other aliens. I never expected they'd all be birds of a feather." Gwen was also very dissatisfied. They had repeatedly supported Asgard, but Asgard had actually brought the war to Earth. "Exactly," Wanda chimed in. "A weak nation has no diplomacy. To defend Earth, we must rely on Earthlings themselves. If it weren't for us superpowered individuals, and Russell and Kamartaj, Loki wouldn't even need to notify us before starting a war on Earth. Just like what the Frost Giants and Asgard did in Norse mythology 1,000 years ago," Dr. Banner added. "Once all the nations of Earth fully understand the technology from the Black Order's warships that Russell brought back, Earth won't be so weak." But Steve's expression shifted, as if he suddenly remembered something. "More than 200 political entities on Earth. If they can't coordinate, they'll only hold each other back." The others also looked dejected upon hearing Steve's words. "Hey, why are you all in the living room? Are you going to eat together?" After everyone had finished complaining, Russell pretended not to know anything, pushed open the palace door, and entered the living room. "Russell, you're back. I have something to tell you." Russell had been careless, he had deliberately waited until everyone had finished complaining before coming in. Unexpectedly, after he entered, the group started complaining again. They patiently listened to Gwen's long rant about Asgard, especially Odin. Russell forced a smile, silently apologizing to Odin before joining the chorus of complaints about Asgard and Odin. He'd been so careless, he'd thought a battlefield was easy to control, regardless of where he was, forgetting to consider Gwen's feelings. While complaining about Odin, Russell secretly made a resolution. He would make Laufey the Frost Giant King become King Laufey again. Blame him for being so talkative, changing battlefields at the last minute. After venting their emotions, the group began packing, preparing to return to Earth the next day. Although, there wasn't much to pack anyway. 7th floor of Russell's bookstore, New York, Earth. A shimmering white light flashed, a portal opened, and Russell led Gwen out. Stepping out of the portal, looking at the familiar yet slightly unfamiliar room before her, Gwen asked, "Russell, so you can come back directly from Asgard? Why didn't you bring Wanda and the others with you? We have to save face for Asgard." "Gwen, think about it, if someone's home is open to anyone else, can that person still feel at ease living there? So, although I can freely enter and leave Asgard, I try not to do so openly," Russell explained, pulling Gwen to sit down. Although the battle with the symbiote god Null was easy and pleasant, it still lasted for over 10 days. He hadn't eaten for over 10 days, and he was mentally hungry. Null had been the one eating at the tea house. Soon, the table was filled with various dishes. Russell and Gwen sat together, slowly eating and sharing their experiences of the past 10 days. A day passed quietly. The next morning, after changing their clothes, Russell and Gwen returned to the side hall of the Golden Palace on time to meet the others and head towards the Rainbow Bridge. When the group arrived, a well-equipped battle legion was already ready for battle in the plaza before the Rainbow Bridge. Leading them was Thor. Although Thor was in the middle of the battle and couldn't move freely, he still raised Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, and winked in greeting. The Asgardian army behind him, seeing Thor raise Mjolnir, chanted rhythmically, "Asgard, victory, Asgard, victory, Asgard, victory." However, compared to the enthusiasm of Thor and the Asgardian army, Steve and the others seemed somewhat indifferent. They only managed a forced smile in response to Thor before walking to the side of the battle formation. Then they silently waited for the Rainbow Bridge to activate and teleport them back to Earth. Russell also stood in the plaza with Gwen, pretending not to see Thor's questioning gaze. A moment later, Baldur, Thor's second-in-command and the god of light, counted the troops and reported back to Thor. Thor gave the order, and the new Bifrost Keeper, Scorch, pretended to plunge his longsword into the control panel, activating the Bifrost. The control panel rotated, pointing towards the plaza, and a massive beam of 7-colored light shot out. Boom! The 7-colored light enveloped everyone, opening a spatial portal and heading towards the depths of space. It still feels more comfortable sitting in Russell's portal, Gwen whispered in Russell's ear. As soon as she spoke, she realized that sound couldn't travel in the spatial portal. But before Gwen could react and try to communicate in another way, Russell's voice reached her ears. Of course, there are differences in spatial teleportation. Within the seven-colored light, a shimmering white glow flowed, enveloping Gwen and Russell, and the discomfort of teleporting through the Bifrost disappeared. I should have had Russell send us back yesterday, or had Loki use the space stone to send us back, Gwen continued to complain. I had just lain down and hadn't even fallen asleep yet when you woke me up again. Right. Why didn't we have Loki send us back yesterday? Russell had also suddenly thought of this question. If Loki heard Russell and Gwen's question, he would answer it. The reason was that Asgard was currently using the energy of the Space Stone to repair the Bifrost. At this time, every time the Bifrost was activated, it would slow down the repair process. Taking the Space Stone out to use it would have the same effect. Boom. A moment later, a rainbow of light traversed endless distances, teleporting Russell and the others, along with the Asgardian army, to Tunsberg in Norse mythology. This was the site of the battle between Asgard and the frost giants of Jotunheim 1,000 years ago. Send a message to King Laufey of the frost giants. Asgard has arrived in Tunsberg. Inquire when they will arrive. Here, I will defeat them, just as my father did 1,000 years ago. Yes, sir, the guard responded and manipulated the instruments to send the message to the frost giants. In outer space, the warships of the four great nations were spread out. On the frost giants' flagship, Laufey received the message from Asgard and was furious. Thor's actions were undoubtedly a provocation, rubbing salt into his wounds. But he was helpless because, damn it, less than a month has passed. How did these mortals establish a planetary defense system? And why are their weapons so powerful? Our warship's energy barriers are completely ineffective. If this continues, 3 days will pass, and we won't be able to land. These weapons of theirs seem very much like those of the Dark Order. Could it be that Midgard has sided with the Dark Order? The Angel Queen wondered, expressing her conjecture via video link. Impossible. Odin may be senile, but he's not incompetent. He can let Midgard develop on its own, but he would never stand by and watch Midgard submit to another power, Laufey retorted. Then where did these Dark Order weapons come from? They couldn't have been given to us by Thanos out of kindness, could they? That mad titan may be young, but his strength shouldn't be underestimated. It's not impossible for him to defeat Odin and take over Midgard, the Angel Queen argued back. She had long disliked Laufey, the Frost Giant King, Surtur, the Fire Giant, and Queen Zend. If it weren't for needing to use them against Asgard, she would have already turned against them. Alright, stop arguing, Queen Zend said, but neither of them paid any attention to her. I've heard about that mad titan's exploits too. Angel Queen, you just have wings, you're not a real bird man. Use your pitifully small brain. If he attacks Midgard, it won't be to subjugate Midgard, but to slaughter half the population. Laufey, you're being insolent. Do you want to taste the sharpness of my sword like Queen Zend? Laufey retorted sarcastically, and the Angel Queen drew her sword in response. Queen Zend's face darkened upon hearing the Angel Queen's words, and she stopped trying to persuade her. Commanders, the Dark Elf supporting character, who had been largely unnoticed, cautiously said, if a frontal assault doesn't work, why not try a stealth attack? Our Dark Elf warships have excellent stealth capabilities, even Heimdall of Asgard would have a hard time detecting them. This mortal kingdom's defense system should also have difficulty detecting them. Laufey and the Angel Queen stopped arguing, discussed the matter with Queen Zend for a while, and decided to try the Dark Elf's suggestion. Soon, a small Dark Elf fighter took off, leaving the main force and then suddenly disappearing into the shadows. Undetectable to the naked eye or any radar, a moment later, a message came from within Earth. Landing mission successful, experiment successful. Let's go down and prepare to land in Midgard, we've caught a big fish. Chapter 246 Sword of Dawn. In the courtyard of the Ancient One's temple in Kamartaj, Nepal, beneath a small mahogany tree that would require 2 people to encircle, a rocking chair creaked. A young man reclined in the chair, dressed in a plain white robe, holding a bamboo fishing rod as if fishing. Russell, are you fishing? You can't catch big fish in this little pond. If you want big fish, you have to go to the sea. The man fishing in the courtyard was none other than Russell. After returning to Earth via the Rainbow Bridge and agreeing to meet Thor in 2 days for the final battle, Russell and the others departed. The Ancient One approached and inquired, but received no response for a long time. She walked around to Russell's side and realized that while he appeared to be fishing, he was actually fast asleep. "You?" The Ancient One chuckled and shook her head, moving a set of chairs and a table to sit beside Russell, brewing and sipping tea. About half an hour later, the fishing line in Russell's hand suddenly moved, waking him. Startled awake by the hooked fish, Russell, still somewhat dazed, instinctively jerked the bamboo pole upwards. With a splash, violent ripples erupted across the surface of the small pond, and a massive red dragon burst forth from the water. Roar! The red dragon roared in pain, its gaze fixed on Russell and the Ancient One beside the pond as it struggled. The dragon opened its mouth, crimson energy gathering in its throat, its breath poised to strike. Just then, a flash of light appeared in Russell's hand, transforming the fishing rod into a silver longsword. Though silver, the sword was emanating dark energy. This dark energy was even more malevolent than the red dragon, a creature of dark magic. Russell flicked his finger, and the longsword moved in a flash, piercing the red dragon's jaws and interrupting its breath. "So you were fishing for a dark creature?" Only now did the Ancient One realize that Russell wasn't fishing for a fish, but for a dark creature lurking outside the real universe. "But what exactly is this sword of yours? Why does it exude such a chilling evil, as if an ancient demon slumbers within it?" Ancient One asked, looking at the longsword Russell was using as a fishing rod, line, and bait all in one. "Sorcerer, your feeling is correct. This sword is called the Sword of Light. Sealed within it is the embodiment of the abyss and darkness, the god of symbiotes, the king in black, Nar. This sword is indeed the Sword of Light that sealed Nar. Although Nar is sealed, his instinct to absorb dark energy cannot be stopped. As long as he exists, the unclaimed dark energy in the universe will unconsciously gravitate towards him. And the gathered dark energy is undoubtedly the best bait to lure dark creatures." After Russell explained the situation to Ancient One, she lowered her head in deep thought. First, he stormed into the blinking realm and fought Sithin to a standstill, and then he sealed Nar, the embodiment of the abyss and darkness. He even shattered the abyss of the universe. Only 2 or 3 years have passed. How come she can't understand this disciple at all? Just a while ago, she could barely see his shadow. After a moment of contemplation, the Ancient One spoke. "Since this is a sword to seal darkness, rather than to completely destroy it, it should be named Dawn. After dawn, there will be dusk and night. This can warn the world that if the seal is not carefully maintained, darkness will return." The Sword of Dawn. Russell's expression was somewhat strange, recalling a novel from before his transmigration. He nodded, agreeing with the Ancient One's suggestion. The name Sword of Dawn was indeed better than Sword of Light. The Ancient One's naming skills were certainly superior to his own. Thinking of names, Russell remembered he had a newborn symbiote, Little Glutton. Should he ask the Ancient One to name him too? Thinking this, Russell softly called out, trying to summon Little Glutton. Suddenly, he remembered that he had left him behind in a dimensional fragment. At that time, Russell and Knuckles were separated by countless universes, and Little Gluttons, overwhelmed by Knuckles' imposing aura, fell from Russell's shoulder. Russell was in a hurry to deal with Knuckles and forgot about him. The symbiote doesn't eat or drink, it shouldn't starve to death in half a month, right? Russell reached out and grabbed at the air, ripples spreading through it, a portal opened, and he pulled out the symbiote, Little Glutton. Little Glutton was now limp and listless. Hungry, sensing the familiar presence, Little Glutton regained a little life, transforming into a long snake and trying to climb up Russell's arm. "Don't do that," Russell shuddered, his hand trembling as he flung Little Glutton away. This was an instinctive discomfort with serpentine creatures. Seeing Little Glutton flung away, the Ancient One reached out and caught him. "What is this? A symbiote?" "That's right. But it might be a little different from other symbiotes. It hasn't completed a substantial parasitic relationship, but rather grows by absorbing my energy." "I see. Can it eat other food normally?" The Ancient One wondered, and immediately began to take action, picking up food one by one to test it. However, the symbiote, the Little Glutton, remained unmoved by most food, showing no desire to eat. "Little Glutton, can you eat?" Russell asked directly, noticing this. The Little Glutton had the intellectual capacity of a 4 or 5-year-old child just 2 weeks ago. Even without further development, it could still communicate normally. "Yes," the Little Glutton replied. "Then what do you like to eat?" Russell continued. I like to eat, the Little Glutton repeated twice, unsure how to explain, and simply pounced on Russell. You like to eat energy, Russell understood, catching the little glutton, his fingertips condensing a shimmering white energy as he fed it, asking, besides energy, what else can you eat? Anything, Russell. Russell, ask him what foods are good for him. For example, what can make him stronger, what can sustain his survival, the Ancient One reminded him from the side. Oh, Russell responded, repeating the Ancient One's question. The little glutton clung tightly to Russell's finger, absorbing energy for a while, then pondered earnestly for a long time. I don't know, Russell, how about I test him? Ancient One suggested, her eyes bright with a thirst for unknown knowledge. Russell thought for a moment, nodded in agreement, and gave a word of caution. All right. But the little glutton's current intelligence is equivalent to that of a 4 or 5-year-old human child. When he comes into contact with external things, his intelligence will grow rapidly until it matures. Please pay attention to his education, don't let him go astray. After all, he was the one who called him Dad. So Russell was very concerned about the little glutton's education. He just didn't want to teach him himself. Now, with the opportunity to have Ancient One teach him, he was more than happy to accept. Oh, no problem. I'll take care of him for a while, and start testing him after he matures, Ancient One immediately agreed. By the way, I'll also borrow your Dawn Blade to study. I'll study it before the little glutton matures. Chapter 247, All That Remains is Noise. For the next 2 days, Russell traveled between Kamartaj and New York to spend time with Gwen and the little glutton. Although he felt a lot of pressure teaching the little glutton himself, worried about not doing a good job, he, as her father, wouldn't neglect his responsibilities. The 2 days passed quickly. The Norwegian Sea, located northwest of Norway, between the North Sea and the Greenland Sea, is a marginal sea of the North Atlantic. It is also the site of the battle between Asgard and the 4 great kingdoms. At this moment, the Norwegian Sea was covered in frost, the entire ocean frozen solid. In the center of the ocean, 2 groups of 50 people stood separately. One group appeared normal, mostly wearing armor and neatly arrayed. They were all ordinary people in appearance and height. The other group had diverse appearances and a scattered formation. They included frost giants, fire giants, and war angels, but notably no dark elves. Among them, the fire giant Surtur had grown to 1,000 feet tall, standing out from the crowd. The frost giant King Laufey was also 10 feet tall and had a massive build, a far cry from his thin appearance when he hid in Jotunheim 2 years ago. From afar, Laufey's gaze locked onto a man in a plain white robe opposite them, Russell. His eyes were cold, a mixture of resentment and apprehension. What a pity, blocked by these mortals of Midgard, unable to land first and pinpoint the battlefield, those damned Midgardians. Queen Zune couldn't help but curse at the mention of Midgard. 3 days ago, they arrived outside Midgard before the Asgardians, only to be blocked by Midgardian weapons and unable to land. A Dark Elf extra suggested they use Dark Elf warships, taking advantage of their stealth capabilities to smuggle themselves in. During the test, the Dark Elf warships succeeded on the first try, completing the smuggling. Midgard's defense system remained completely unaware. But when they actually attempted the smuggling, they discovered it was a trap. Caught off guard, this smuggling operation resulted in heavy losses for the 4 kingdoms, with less than 1/10 of their elite warriors remaining. As a result, those accompanying them now were mostly unfit individuals. It's alright, we'll teach the Midgards a lesson after we defeat Asgard, the Angel Queen said coldly. Her war angels could fly, preventing them from becoming easy targets in the air. Their losses were less than those of the other 3 great nations, but still extremely heavy. Although this battle is 50 against 50, the final decision will be made by our top warriors, Surtur said in a deep, deafening voice. We have 4 top warriors, while Asgard only has 2. As long as the 4 of us don't make a mistake, the Asgardians will have absolutely no chance of winning, Surtur's voice rang out, and although the Asgardian battle formation remained unmoved, a few warriors couldn't help but show a hint of worry in their eyes. Their morale weakened considerably. Lies don't hurt, but the truth is the sharpest blade. Whether Surtur intended it or not, this psychological warfare was remarkably effective. As Surtur said, it appeared to be 50 against 50, but in reality, apart from the top warriors, the rest were just there to make up the numbers. Surtur, however, was unaware that true top-tier combat power wasn't 4 against 2, but 0 against 1. Fire giants, war angels, dark elves, frost giants. Thor recited the names of the 4 races one by one. An alliance of losers will only embrace defeat in the end. In the past, my father and my grandfather were able to lead Asgard to defeat you. Today, I can also lead Asgard to defeat you. Asgard, victorious, Asgard, victorious, Asgard, victorious. First, the 40-odd Asgardian warriors nearby behind Thor, then the thousands further away, joined him in chanting, Asgard, victorious. For a moment, only the shouts of Asgard, victorious, echoed across the Norwegian Sea. The rest was just noise. On the coast, high-ranking officials from various countries, accompanied by their nation's superhumans and elite troops, watched this scene from afar. Although that big guy said the four-nation alliance seems to have a greater advantage, judging from their momentum, Asgard isn't without a chance, said a middle-aged Asian man. Director of the Divine Spear Bureau, modern warfare relies on technology and science. Even with supernatural powers, it remains the same. Momentum? What use is that? Director of the Sky Sword Bureau, seeing is believing. Let's watch and see if momentum is useful. The Asian man was Zhang Xian, the director of the Divine Spear Bureau. He smiled, seemingly unconcerned. Then let's see for ourselves. Abigail Brand, the director of the Sky Sword Bureau, also smiled. Although both men appeared nonchalant, they were actually engaged in a fierce debate. Half a month ago, the capital of the United States was attacked, and its infrastructure was damaged, severely weakening its national strength. This tragedy spurred nations around the world to cooperate. In a very short time, countries integrated resources and completed the deployment of defenses in outer space. This was a good thing for Earth, but undoubtedly a bad thing for the United States. The most direct reason is that, due to the decline of the United States' national strength, SWAR lost its leading role in the construction of its outer space defense system and was replaced by SHIELD. Tony Stark took this opportunity to recommend Ultron to various countries. After a series of complex restrictions, the countries accepted Ultron. Ultron thus took over the highest authority over all of Earth's extraterrestrial defense facilities. And 2 days ago, despite technologically inferior conditions, he discovered the Dark Elf stealth fighters through big data comparative analysis, creating favorable conditions for a major victory. I'm very curious, what conditions did Asgard promise to make you agree to place the battlefield here? Tony shouted, expressing his dissatisfaction. With Ultron coordinating global weapons, we can completely drive them all out of Earth. Although Tony had a good relationship with Thor and Loki, personal relationships are personal, and business is business. He strongly opposed Asgard and the four major nations' decision to place the battle on Earth. Mr. Stark, you don't need to worry about that, Abigail Brand said indifferently. Although he and Tony were both from the United States, their interests and stances differed, making them not on the same side. He also had to prevent Tony from using Ultron to seize his power. Mr. Stark, if you'd like to know, I can tell you about the conditions Asgard promised the Eastern Kingdom. However, such secrets shouldn't be revealed to unrelated people. Unlike Abigail Brand, Zhang Xian was enthusiastic. He had long coveted Tony's genius. How about this? We arrange a time to talk privately. Just as the people on the shore were chatting, the two sides officially went to war in the center of the ice. Chapter 248 Russell, fight me. Asgard, victory, kill. 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 The shouts of the opposing forces charging in the middle of the Norwegian Sea interrupted Tony Stark and his companions' conversation on the shore. They looked in the direction of the sound and saw the Asgardian team and a mixed team from the four great kingdoms charging towards each other, wielding various weapons. What era are we living in? Still using cold weapons? A disdainful sneer suddenly rang out from the crowd. God of Thunder, soldier against soldier, general against general. Thor, wielding Mjolnir, leaped high into the air, actively engaging the fire giant Surtur. A continuous stream of divine power surged from his body, converging on Mjolnir in his hand. Mjolnir crackled with lightning, sparks crackling and crackling. Facing Thor's attack, Surtur remained calm, wielding his gigantic Twilight Sword as if swatting a mosquito at Thor. Mjolnir and Twilight Sword collided, like lightning striking fire from the earth. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by deafening thunder. A massive bolt of lightning descended from nowhere, a colossal lightning dragon hurtling down with immense power, striking Surtur. The eternal flame on Surtur's crown blazed fiercely, instantly erasing the silver streak left by the lightning. Then, the flame spread to the Twilight blade in his hand, exploding and hurtling towards Thor. Boom! In an instant, lightning and fire, Thor and Surtur, were locked in battle, Mjolnir and the Twilight Blade clashing and separating. Thor, engulfed in flames, was sent flying by the shockwave of the collision, crashing heavily into the ice, creating a crater 100 meters wide. The flames scattered, landing on the Asgardian warriors and blazing fiercely. A crimson light illuminated the entire battlefield, and within moments, the aroma of roasting meat filled the air. Divine protection. Seeing this, Loki stomped Gungnir, the Spear of Eternity, on the ground, and a green magic circle spread out, creating a magical field. Within the magical field, the flames on the Asgardian soldiers gradually extinguished, and their injuries healed rapidly. Thor, are you alright? After calming Surtur's flames and their effects on the Asgardian warriors, Loki looked at Thor. I'm fine, I can fight him for another 3 days and 3 nights. Thor quickly climbed out of the giant crater. Although he looked a bit disheveled, his hair singed and curly, he was thick-skinned and actually quite unharmed. I'll be more careful from now on, shifting the battle position to avoid affecting other warriors. Although apart from the top fighters, the rest of the soldiers were just there to make up the numbers and increase the momentum. Thor wouldn't waste their lives carelessly. Surtur, come with me if you dare, Thor challenged Surtur, and the two tacitly moved the battlefield to distance. After moving away from the center of the team's battle, Thor and Surtur unleashed their full firepower. The battle between the two intensified, lightning and flames spreading as they each claimed a territory, painting the distant sky a silver and red hue. Their movements were swift and fierce, each clash of hammer and sword unleashing thunderous roars and erupting flames. Loki, the Frost Giant King, dare to fight me. In the midst of the battle, Loki locked his gaze on Laufey, issuing a challenge. Firstly, he wanted to settle things with his biological father. Secondly, he wanted revenge for being banished and hunted down in Alfheim. Get lost. I have no interest in you. Laufey swung his greatsword behind him with a sudden clash, the air rippling. Loki's sneak attack with the Spear of Eternity was discovered, and Laufey parried the blow. Having forced Loki back, Laufey did not press his advantage, ignoring him completely. He simply stared intently at Russell in the distance, shouting loudly, yet his voice was chillingly cold. Russell, fight me. I will wash away the shame of Jotunheim, I will reclaim the glory of the Frost Giants. As you wish. Russell narrowed his eyes, glanced at Laufey, and then flew away. He wanted to stay away from the Asgardian elites fighting in the center of the battlefield to avoid being affected by the aftermath of the battle. However, Laufey, lacking any sense of martial ethics, took out the icebox from his mouth as Russell turned to fly away. The icebox was aimed at Russell, and a white stream of cold air surged out, shooting towards Russell. Along the way, the moisture in the air froze into frost, falling like snowflakes. Shield of Seraphim, Russell turned around, his right hand held out, magical sparks flashing, and a golden energy shield inscribed with mysterious runes formed in front of him. The cold air bombarded the Shield of Seraphim, but could not shake it in the slightest. However, the escaping cold air caused the temperature on the battlefield to drop again. The magical cold was more biting than a southern winter. Even the Asgardian elite warriors, whose physiques far surpassed those of ordinary people, found it unbearable. Before long, a layer of frost formed on the surface of their armor. Exposed skin and body hair were frozen, as if covered in sharp spikes. Any slight movement would cause the spikes to pierce the skin. For a moment, the Asgardian warriors' movements became stiff, and their coordination became chaotic. Their previously overwhelming advantage dwindled to a slight one, energy absorption. Russell guided the magical energy within the cold current, absorbing it completely. However, the temperature still didn't rise, and everyone already felt extremely cold. Temperature is essentially a measure of the average kinetic energy of molecules within an object. Russell's absorption of the surrounding magical energy could only slow the cooling of the icebox. He had to actively provide energy to heat the surrounding air to achieve a warming effect. Given Russell's personality, he disliked this unprofitable endeavor. Fortunately, some people didn't mind. Phoenix Blaze, Queen Cinder was overjoyed to see Russell make his move. She had suffered 2 defeats in the civil war against her ally, the Angel Queen Malekith. Now she needed an object to assert her authority and re-establish her status. Flames appeared out of thin air on the ice, spontaneously combusting, mimicking the shape of a phoenix, bypassing the Shield of Seraphim and attacking Russell. As the phoenix approached, Russell remained calm, simply blowing a breath forward. A powerful current surged, the air transforming into countless blades, dismembering the phoenix into countless tiny flames, which were then scattered and landed on the Asgardian warriors. The flames burned, and the Asgardian warriors' body temperatures rose slightly. However, compared to before, they had still dropped a bit. Luffy, at this moment, still hadn't stopped using the box of ice to create a cold current. Bang! A loud explosion erupted as Russell, shield in hand, withstood the cold current, transforming into a golden streak of light and charging towards Luffy. The next instant, the shield of Seraphim vanished, and a silver glowing fist pierced through the white icy current, appearing before Luffy's eyes. The fist rapidly enlarged in Luffy's vision, especially in his right eye. So fast. Luffy had no time to react before being sent flying backward, traversing thousands of meters along the ice surface, crashing with a loud thud into an iceberg formed by a wave. Pain. It hurt a lot. It hurt terribly. Only now did Luffy react, feeling the intense pain emanating from his right eye. This pain felt like an electric drill piercing his heart, like a stick churning his brain. His injury wasn't serious, so why did it hurt so much? Luffy didn't have time to think further before another force surged from his abdomen. He was sent flying backward again, completely away from the central battlefield. It seems that melee weapons are quite powerful too, someone among the spectators on the shore whispered. Soon, someone else retorted. Don't be fooled by their fierce fighting, only about 10 people have died. If they used heavy weaponry, there would be hardly anyone left on the battlefield by now, so, should we take this opportunity to unleash a barrage of fire and wipe them all out? I heard that although this battle is small scale, 50 against 50, Asgard, and those frost giants, fire giants, dark elves, and angels, their high-ranking officials are all here, and that, watch your mouth, the man was interrupted sharply before he could finish. Establishing diplomatic relations with Asgard, using it as a stepping stone to the universe, is a decision made by the United Nations. All 5 permanent members of the Security Council have agreed. What, you have a problem with that? The person next to him quickly whispered a reminder. Some superhumans have exceptional hearing. Even though we're far away, they can hear what we're saying. The man murmured twice, lowered his head, and said nothing more. Only a hint of disappointment flashed in his eyes. A moment later, unnoticed by the onlookers, the man quietly left. Who is this person? Unbeknownst to her, Russell had tracked down the source of her malice. There were many people on Earth who harbored ill will towards Russell, some New Yorkers, and most of the remnants of Sakura Island. However, these people were mostly ordinary people who didn't know Russell's identity. Firstly, they wouldn't appear in this place, and secondly, they wouldn't recognize him. But this person possessed magical fluctuations, and her resentment was extremely concentrated. Clearly, she knew Russell's identity and was targeting him. Russell observed her closely and noticed that after leaving the crowd and returning to the community, she transformed into a well-dressed professional woman. While casually tossing Luffy in frustration, Russell recalled the energy aura emanating from this person. The Dark Tome. And dark energy. Russell was quite familiar with this aura. Back then, when he first obtained the Dark Tome, he had also studied it day and night, never putting it down. Until he went to the Blinking Realm to cause trouble for Sifin, the Dark Tome in his hands dissipated on its own. The witch Agatha Harkness? After roughly guessing the person's identity, Russell withdrew his attention, leaving only a sliver of his mind focused on her. He planned to talk to her after finishing his current tasks, asking her why she harbored such deep resentment towards him. Loki and Queen Cinder also went to fight away from the center of the battlefield. Although Loki tried his best to entangle them, unleashing various spells, there was still a significant gap in combat power between the two sides. Loki could only barely hold on with the Spear of Eternity. On the other side, the Angel Queen saw that Asgard's high-level combat force had been attracted away, and no one was paying attention to her. She immediately grinned maliciously and flapped her wings, flying towards the Asgardian squad's battle formation. In an instant, she was like a tiger among sheep. The Angel Queen wielded her longsword, and no one could withstand her. The sword's edge was unstoppable, a graze was fatal, a knock was fatal. Ha ha ha. Ho ha ho ha, the Angel Queen laughed heartily, enjoying the thrill of slaughtering Asgard's elite. Damn it, seeing this, Baldur, the god of light, Sif, and the warriors 3 of Asgard exchanged glances and tacitly surrounded her. With Sif and her group leaving the battle lines to attack the Angel Queen, the Asgardian team's strength declined again. For a time, they were evenly matched with the combined forces of the 4 kingdoms. However, aside from the small-scale battles, Asgard was at a disadvantage in 3 other battles: Thor vs. Surtur, Loki vs. Queen Zinder, and Sif and her group vs. the Angel Queen. The battle involving Sif and her group was the most dangerous. In just a short time, Hogun, one of the Warriors 3 of Asgard, was wounded by the Angel Queen's sword. They should be here soon, right? Noticing this, Russell became secretly vigilant, further concealing his aura. He pretended to be weak, giving Laufey some chance to fight back. If he displayed too much power, he might scare away the ancient gods of the World Tree. This fierce battle was a show to attract the attention of the ancient gods of the World Tree, luring them to intervene and trigger Ragnarok. Odin seized the opportunity to find the thread of fate. The current situation threatened to crumble Asgard. This was contrary to the interests of the ancient gods of the World Tree. The Ragnarok they needed wasn't just the fall of the Asgardian gods, but a mutual destruction of both gods and giants, a shared demise. In simpler terms, they wanted it all. To achieve this, they would likely secretly aid Asgard. Suddenly, an invisible ripple spread. Except for Russell, no one present noticed. Kill. For Asgard, in the midst of the battle between Asgard and the allied forces of the 4 great kingdoms, an Asgardian warrior suddenly rose up, beheading his opponent with a single sword stroke, shouting, "For Asgard!" The remaining 20-odd Asgardian elites, inspired by this, unleashed a slight increase in their usual fighting power. Although it was only a slight boost in morale and strength, it was enough to break the balance and instantly crush the combined force of the 4 great kingdoms. Before Sif and her group's battle against the Angel Queen collapsed, Asgardian elites annihilated the mixed squad and reinforced Sif's group. The heavily wounded Hogun was able to catch his breath, and with the help of an Asgardian elite, retreated to the sidelines to treat his wounds before rejoining the battle. Even with these Asgardian elites joining the fray, the Angel Queen maintained her dominance, steadily inflicting casualties. However, she could no longer mow down Asgardian warriors as easily as she had during the chaotic battle. This bought Thor and Loki more time. If they could defeat their opponents before Sif and her group crumbled, they could reverse Asgard's unfavorable situation. Director of Seraph, seeing is believing. This is the power of morale. These soldiers who seem to be just there for show have become the key force in deciding the outcome of the battle at crucial moments, Zheng Xian remarked, deeply moved by the scene. The outcome is still uncertain, Director of Seraph, Abigail Brand replied indifferently. How? Zheng Xian merely chuckled lightly, but Abigail's face instantly fell, turning ugly. The Asgardian team, relying on their overwhelming momentum, quickly eliminated their opponents, compensating for their lack of high-end combat power. Under everyone's watchful eyes, this was an undeniable fact. He could be stubborn, but he couldn't fool himself. Chapter 249 The Death of Laufey. Ho ha ho ha, I finally waited until your magic is exhausted. Now, it's my turn, Laufey roared to the sky, displaying the might of the Frost Giant King. He used the power of the icebox to continuously create ice spikes, forcing Russell to dodge and weave, finding nowhere to land. He was radiant, full of vigor and high spirits. It was just a pity that the large dark circle under his right eye ruined his invincible appearance. You're celebrating too soon, Laufey. Russell leaped high into the air, dodging the ice spikes that kept appearing beneath his feet. At the same time, he opened his arms as if to embrace. Light, grant me power. Magical sparks flashed in the sky, and a portal opened. On the other side of the portal, a huge fireball suddenly shone brightly. Laufey was shocked, staring at Russell in disbelief. This is your home, how dare you use that move here? Without thinking, Laufey activated the power of the ice box with all his might, condensing an ice shield in front of him. Layers of icy shields stacked upon each other, like a tortoise shell protecting Laufey. However, the high-energy pulse cannon Laufey had anticipated didn't arrive. The solar energy emerging from the portal didn't directly attack Laufey, but instead flowed into Russell's body. Laufey sensed Russell's energy fluctuations rising steadily with the influx of solar energy. His depleted mana was replenished, quickly returning to its initial full state. You know I don't use that move on Earth casually, so why are you so scared? Russell teased. His gaze shifted to Queen Cinder, who was locked in battle with Loki. She now held the upper hand. You damned bug, all you do is run, run, run. Queen Cinder was extremely frustrated. Although she was stronger than Loki, Loki used magical illusions and portals to outmaneuver her, making her attacks miss most of the time. When she finally managed to land a hit, A flash of green light appeared on Loki's body, and his injuries mysteriously disappeared. However, this is where it ends, Queen Zune sneered. While Loki was constantly dodging the attack, she had been taking the opportunity to set up a magic circle. Now that the circle was complete, she was determined to leave Loki with nowhere to escape. Centered on Queen Zune, 5 fireballs suddenly rose in the distance. Each of the 5 fireballs fired a line of fire, connecting with the other 4. In an instant, a huge pentagram magic circle was formed. The moment the circle formed, flames erupted from the ground, shooting straight into the sky. Anyone within the circle had no way to escape. Seeing this, Loki hurriedly opened a portal to get away from the area, but he was still a step too late. The flames surged through the portal, coiling around Loki like fire serpents. Loki quickly closed the portal, cutting off the source of the flames. But the flames on his body still burned fiercely, scorching him through Loki's defensive spells. A green light emanated from Loki's body, trying to restore his condition to before he was coiled by the fire serpents. Ineffective. Loki rushed into a block of ice, hoping the cold would extinguish the flames. Ineffective. The flames clung to him like maggots, and Loki couldn't extinguish them no matter what he tried. Laufey, since you like being a coward, stay in there. I'm going to find your teammates. Great wilderness meteor shower. Russell's figure rose again, reaching above the clouds, before plunging downwards. Solar energy erupted, combined with the gravitational acceleration, propelling Russell past the speed of sound and continuing to climb. Intense friction generated heat, igniting Russell's clothes and making him glow red. From afar, he looked like a meteorite falling from the sky. He slammed into Queen Zune, who was focused on controlling the magic array. Russell, with immense force, crashed into Queen Zune, using her as a cushion to slam into the ice. Boom! Ice shards flew everywhere, accompanied by sparks shooting upwards. The ice shards liquefied and vaporized in midair. Some fell as a fine drizzle, others as a misty vapor. For a moment, outsiders couldn't see what was happening inside, only hearing a series of booming sounds. In the mist, Russell, with one hand on Queen Zune's neck, straddled her. After a moment's thought, he punched her in the left eye, creating a dark circle similar to Laufey's. Ah! The sharp pain jolted the stunned Queen Zune awake. Realizing her predicament, Queen Zune gathered energy in her chest, intending to unleash it to force Russell back. Russell saw through her every move, raising his knee and slamming it into her abdomen. Although Russell restrained himself, not unleashing too much power, the knee strike to Queen Zune's abdomen easily dispersed the energy she had painstakingly gathered. Damn it! Finding it difficult to buy time to unleash her power, Queen Zune used both hands and feet. Her hands transformed into 2 fiery fists, pounding Russell's abdomen and chest. Her feet used her knees to strike Russell's back. It was a typical thug fight. Russell cast a spell on himself for protection, ignoring Queen Zune's attacks. Russell tightened his grip on Queen Zune's neck with his left hand, so tightly she couldn't break free. Simultaneously, his right hand struck her heart repeatedly. Queen Zune's throat was choked, making breathing difficult and causing oxygen deprivation to her brain. Her heart was being repeatedly struck, disrupting her blood circulation. Gradually, her struggles weakened, and she was on the verge of being choked unconscious. An indescribable aura spread across the arena. Russell remained impassive, subtly loosening his grip. In a fleeting moment, she saw her father, Surtur. He held the Twilight Sword, towering and unyielding. No one could stop his sword. Her father was still so tall and powerful, seemingly omnipotent. Queen Zune thought to herself, as if transported back to her childhood. Back then, she had looked up at her father in the same way. Suddenly, Queen Zune's grip loosened, and she could breathe again. The next moment, icy water rushed into her mouth and nose. Zune struggled to her feet, coughing violently. It turned out that a huge crater had been blasted into the ice beneath her, and the melting ice water flowed down, forming a small lake. She was in the very center and deepest part of this lake. A moment later, Queen Zune regained her senses and found Surtur holding the Twilight Sword in one hand, shielding her at her feet. That wasn't a hallucination she'd had before losing consciousness. It was Surtur realizing his daughter was in danger and rushing to her aid. "Be careful, Zune," Surtur said in a low voice. Where Queen Zune couldn't see, his left hand trembled slightly, uncontrollably. This was the price. Although Thor was slightly weaker than him, shaking off Thor's entanglement to rescue his daughter wouldn't be easy. "Yes, father." Queen Zine coughed up blood and replied. Then, looking at Luffy, who approached with a slightly ashamed expression, she said coldly, Luffy, keep an eye on your people. Luffy smiled wryly, offering no reply. Alright, the battle isn't over yet, don't panic, Surtur reassured the two and continued towards Thor. Luffy did the same, unleashing icy spikes to divide the battlefield, while also using the Frost Dragon to force Russell to distance. Luffy and Surtur's feminine attributes clashed, their combined strength was actually lower than higher, making separate combat more suitable. Russell, Thor, and Loki were aware of this but didn't take it seriously. If Russell didn't restrain himself, he could easily wipe out the three of them. Loki, be careful too. Before parting ways, Thor also reminded Loki. If Russell hadn't come to the rescue and interrupted Queen Zine's spellcasting, Loki would have been in danger. Okay, Loki nodded, determined to be even more cautious. Soon, the battle resumed, with the six of them locked in a fierce fight. The situation was slightly different from before. Surtur's strength had decreased after being injured, making him nearly evenly matched with Thor. Seeing Russell's magic power exhausted again, Luffy seized the opportunity to avenge his previous defeat. He activated the ice casket with all his might, generating countless icebergs that swooped down on Russell. The icebergs blotted out the sky, omnipresent in the air and on the ground, even more difficult to dodge than the ice spikes. Every now and then, an iceberg would strike Russell, causing ripples in the protective spells on his body. The situation seemed to be in Luffy's favor. However, a sense of unease arose within Luffy, churning within him. It was as if it were warning him of danger, urging him to move away quickly. Luffy surveyed his surroundings, trying to pinpoint the source of the danger, and noticed that Russell seemed somewhat dazed, staring blankly at him. Just as Luffy had seen, Russell was indeed lost in thought. When Queen Cinder was on the verge of death, he had felt a sense of déjà vu, a feeling of destiny. But after Surtur saved Queen Cinder, this déjà vu had faded. Russell looked up in the direction of Asgard. He had some questions to ask Odin about Ragnarok. The endless distance was traversed in an instant, and a phantom figure materialized beside Odin. King of Gods, did you just discover anything? The phantom figure was Russell, who asked directly. Odin, with his back to Russell, looked down into the cosmic void, seemingly traversing endless distances to witness the battle on Earth. The World Tree Ancient God just made a move, and the thread of fate stirred. But unfortunately, I couldn't grasp it. Russell nodded. Indeed, I suspected that whenever a powerful god or giant dies, the World Tree Ancient God is activated, taking the opportunity to absorb their primordial energy. Later, I'll find an opportunity to properly injure Luffy. King of Gods, prepare yourself and see if you can grasp the thread of fate. It might not be that simple, Odin said thoughtfully, as if pondering something. Let's try. If we succeed, we'll gain. If not, we won't lose. Alright, let's try again. Odin nodded in agreement, his gaze profound, as if he had made a decision. Back on the Norwegian battlefield, Luffy's heart skipped a beat when he saw Russell's eyes shift from confusion to sharpness. His ominous premonition grew stronger. He should have accepted Loki's challenge. Sword, come. Russell pointed to the sky, and a long sword gleaming with a holy silver light shot through the air, which Russell caught. Along with the sword came a sticky, silvery, unidentified object. Imperial armor, combine. The object slammed into Russell, spreading out to form a menacing, sharply defined suit of armor. Under the sunlight, the armor shone brilliantly. This sword is named Dawn, signifying the dispelling of darkness. This armor is named Emperor, signifying the radiant sun. Donning the Emperor armor and wielding the Dawn sword, Russell lunged forward, attacking Luffy. The armor seemed to absorb solar energy, its body ablaze with the flames of the sun. Luffy's released icebergs melted before they could even get close. The sword flashed, unleashing a surge of light, dazzling and visually appealing. The light refracted through the ice, displaying a vibrant array of colors. But it was ultimately meaningless. Luffy was of the ice element, not the darkness. Unaffected, he raised his greatsword with both hands, lowering his center of gravity to block. Luffy knew that the mage before him was a monstrous ice beast in human skin, possessing immense power. Clang! A crisp sound rang out as the sword of Dawn struck Luffy's greatsword. A terrifying clash of forces created a shockwave. After a brief stalemate, a figure was sent flying by the shockwave. The two were vastly different in size, but it was the much larger Luffy who was sent flying. Even though Luffy had exerted all his strength, Adopting a defensive stance to meet Russell's attack, he still couldn't stop Russell. Russell pressed his advantage, catching up with Laufey's flying figure and slashing his sword fiercely at his chest. This time, unlike Queen Zend, Laufey didn't have anyone to come to his rescue. With a sharp slash, a sword wound appeared, running from Laufey's left shoulder to his right abdomen, blood gushing out as if it were free. Boom! The force of the sword altered Laufey's trajectory, sending him flying backward and crashing heavily onto the ice in front of Russell. Ugh! Upon landing, Laufey couldn't help but cough up several mouthfuls of blood. Although Russell had held back, not aiming for his head, he had been stabbed in the chest, his internal organs severely damaged, blood gushing uncontrollably. Undoubtedly, such an injury was fatal. In a moment, he would likely lose his life. Cough cough cough. I didn't expect I'd still be no match for you. Laufey struggled to his feet, unwilling to fall before this arch-enemy. You won, but Asgard won't win, and Midgard certainly won't win. Looking at Russell's feigned weakness after unleashing his full-force attack, Laufey said. In the distance, the battle between the Angel Queen and Sif and the others had also concluded. Or rather, the Angel Queen had almost slaughtered Asgard's elite. Only a few severely wounded soldiers remained, lying on the ground, temporarily withdrawn from the battle. Laufey gasped for breath, but air escaped from the wound on his chest. To die at the hands of someone like you is my luck, Laufey said haltingly, seemingly speaking with the wisdom of a dying man. His voice grew fainter, the sense of destiny growing stronger. Russell focused intently, carefully sensing the situation. Although finding the thread of fate was Odin's task, he wouldn't completely ignore it. In terms of perception alone, he far surpassed Odin. It was just that he wasn't part of Ragnarok, like an observer watching from across the river, unable to see the bigger picture. Otherwise, he would have already followed the trajectory of fate to find the ancient gods behind the world tree. Just then, Laufey's dim eyes suddenly brightened. With his last breath, he activated the ice casket, and a blast of cold air surged forth. Russell's eyes flickered, a sigh escaped his lips. He deliberately feigned surprise, revealing a hint of panic. In an instant, the icy current engulfed Russell, freezing him. Seeing this, Laufey's eyes dimmed, and his life force vanished completely. Even after losing his life force, his body still followed his will from before death, controlling the ice box to aim at Russell, continuously reinforcing the icy seal. Jotunheim, this is the last thing I can do for you. Chapter 250. Why did the God King go here? I thank you on Laufey's behalf. He was a respectable king and shouldn't die with humiliation and regret. Odin opened his eyes and spoke slowly from the control panel of the Asgardian Rainbow Bridge. He was referring to Russell's feigned weakness in failing to dodge Laufey's final attack. In Laufey's eyes, this battle concerned the fate of the 9 kingdoms of the World Tree. If he died without contributing anything, he wouldn't die peacefully. Russell's performance gave him the illusion of temporarily eliminating one of Laufey's top fighters, fulfilling his dying wish. No need, Russell shook his head, skipping the topic. Laufey wasn't a powerful enemy, nor was he particularly disliked. Russell didn't mind giving him some face. Did the God King discover anything? This time it was Odin's turn to shake his head. Still a little short, still a little short? Then do you need me? Russell gestured. Odin smiled, the old man's face showing a carefree attitude. No need, I already know where that last bit is missing. Where's it missing? Russell asked, playing along. The problem lies with me. Odin pointed to himself, then sighed suddenly. I really envy Laufey. Seeing Odin's forlorn expression, Russell remained silent for a moment before laughing. King of Gods, should I give you a good whack? I guarantee I'll be a professional. No need. Odin turned back to look at Asgard one last time, at the myriad lights of the city. Amidst the lights, Queen Frigg walked gracefully towards him. Is the King of Gods leaving? Yes. Why? For Asgard, for the beings of the 9 realms. I must break the cycle of fate that has shrouded the 9 realms for billions of years. I must restore peace and tranquility to the 9 realms. This is my duty, my mission. With that, Odin turned away, his life force abruptly dissipating, transforming into a cluster of starlight that scattered into the deep cosmos beneath his feet. The starlight flickered, and Odin, the king of Asgard, perished. After his physical body vanished, Odin's spirit gave up resistance, letting himself drift along with some unseen guidance. Lord Russell, if I succeed, I will inform Thor and have him come find you, Earth, Norwegian Sea. Russell's attention returned from Asgard, carefully observing the frozen state. No more cold currents were reinforcing it. He looked along the icicles and discovered that Loki's icebox had vanished without wings. Could it be? A thief had intruded into the battlefield between Asgard and the four great kingdoms? Upon closer inspection, it turned out Loki had followed in his father's footsteps and taken the icebox. However, Loki's current situation was not good. The Angel Queen slowly approached Sif, placing her foot on Sif's chest and wiping the bloodstains on her foot with Sif's armor. You Vanir gods really enjoy being dogs of the Aesir. It was like this thousands of years ago, and it's still like this now, the Angel Queen mocked, sheathing her sword and raising her foot high, stomping fiercely towards Sif's face. To share the world tree with you Vanir gods is truly shameful. Killing you would only dirty my sword, then don't kill me, a mocking voice rang out, and golden magical sparks flickered beneath Sif. A portal opened, and Sif plummeted downwards under the force of gravity. However, her descent was clearly slower than the Angel Queen's stomping right foot. Suddenly, an arm reached out from the portal, grabbing Sif and yanking her backwards. Simultaneously, a golden spearhead thrust towards the Angel Queen's foot. The Eternal Spear, the Angel Queen, though startled, remained calm, using her wings to dodge. The one who rescued Sif in time was Loki. Sif, you traded a head of golden hair for a life. You've hit the jackpot, Loki quipped. After finding the ice box, he had used it to turn the tide of battle, gaining an advantage in his fight with Queen Destined. He used the ice box to create a maze, combining it with magical illusions to completely outmaneuver Queen Destined. Thus, they found the leisure to chat with Sif about their youthful folly on the battlefield. Years ago, Loki had done something mischievous while Sif slept, secretly cutting off her prized long, golden hair. Of course, Loki had been beaten up for it countless times, even now. Get lost, Loki. What kind of time is this to be joking around? Think of something. Sif got up and kicked Loki. Hey, Sif. I just saved you and healed your wounds, and this is how you treat me. Loki still grinned, but his smile quickly faded. Queen Cinder saw through his trick and flew out of the icy labyrinth towards him. The Angel Queen, annoyed that he had left her side, also flapped her wings and flew towards him. While Loki and Sif were talking, the attacks from Queen Cinder and the Angel Queen came one after the other. Ahead of Loki, a fiery phoenix swooped down, its approach bringing waves of heat. Behind him, the Angel Queen flew in, her sword gleaming with a chilling light. Loki, not wanting to take both attacks head-on, created several magical illusions and fled in different directions. Each illusion dragged Sif along, lifelike and indistinguishable from the real thing. However, they were too slow. Compared to Loki alone, the two of them, with Sif, were far too slow to escape. Suddenly, the phoenix flapped its wings, unleashing a sea of heat that engulfed all the illusions of Loki and Sif. This is bad. Seeing no way to escape, Loki had no choice but to activate the ice casket, using its icy power to counter the heat. A white stream of cold water erupted from the ice casket, instantly dispelling the heat and extinguishing the flames, colliding with the phoenix. Ice and fire, white and red, two energies of diametrically opposed nature collided and vanished without a trace, leaving only rising mist. With a casket of ice, Loki held his own against Queen Cinder in their clash of energy. But now, he faced more than just Queen Cinder. In the blink of an eye, the moment Loki's true form was revealed, the Angel Queen flapped her wings in a graceful arc, turning and swooping down on Loki, her blade slashing down. So fast. Facing the Angel Queen's sword, Loki was terrified. He hadn't expected the seemingly ordinary Angel Queen to possess such terrifying speed. Loki quickly raised Spear of Eternity horizontally, using the shaft to block the blade. Seeing this, the Angel Queen instinctively wanted to change her move and slice off Loki's finger. But remembering that this was Odin's Spear of Eternity, a fierce glint flashed in her eyes, and she slashed down with even greater force. She wanted to cut off Odin's weapon. Clang! The sword clashed with the spear, producing a deafening explosion. Loki's hand jerked, nearly dropping the Spear of Eternity. But remembering it was the Spear of Eternity, the symbol of the Asgardian king, Loki held on tightly. A tremendous force slammed Loki and the spear into the ground, creating a deep crater in the ice. Loki lay in the crater, the ice casket he'd thrown aside in his attempt to free his hands to defend against the Angel Queen's attack. The Angel Queen looked down into the crater, seeing the Spear of Eternity unharmed, and scoffed. Is this all the skill Odin's son has? Get up, let me strike a few more times, have some fun. The Angel Queen looked down at Loki with mockery. Loki remained unmoved by her taunts. His eyes were vacant as he muttered to himself, "Father, how could, good, I know, I won't let you and Mother down." Meanwhile, Thor was also lost in thought, longing for his father. He and Loki were pulled into the spiritual realm by Odin. "Father, why did you call us in now? The battle is fierce, I need to finish off Surtur as soon as possible to support Loki," Thor said hastily, taking a few steps forward as soon as they entered the spiritual realm. "Thor, calm down," Odin slowly turned around. In the spiritual world, he had shed his golden armor, donning a simple white robe, appearing more benevolent. As his words fell, a gentle breeze rustled the waist-high grass. Thor's mind shifted accordingly, and he remained silent, waiting for Odin to speak. Odin's gaze swept over Thor and Loki, and after confirming they were both calm, he pulled them to sit down and began to recount his and Russell's plans. Besides their schemes, Odin also told Thor and Loki several secrets. "The beings of the 9 realms have already shed too much blood. Let this war, and all the grudges from before, end with this final battle. Thor, Loki, promise me that after the victory, you will not harm the dark elves, frost giants, fire giants, and angels." "Yes," Thor and Loki nodded. "But if there is an opportunity, kill the angel queen Havening to avenge your sister." "Sister? We have another sister? Why have we never heard you or Mother mention her?" Thor asked in surprise. "There are 2 older sisters," Odin said, his expression complex. "The second one was killed by the angel queen Havening thousands of years ago during the war between Asgard and Heaven. At that time, she was just an infant. The first one is a taboo in Asgard. Her name is Hela, the goddess of death in Asgard. She fought alongside me in the 9 realms. She was invincible, unbeatable in every battle. Besides me, she was the strongest being in the 9 realms. But even after the 9 realms were pacified, her desire for conquest remained unquenched. She wanted to start an even greater war. I couldn't stop her, so I imprisoned her. Now, she's about to be released. What should we do?" Loki asked, both he and Thor somewhat bewildered. Suddenly, there were 2 more sisters. "Her power comes from Asgard. Once she returns there, her power will be limitless and uncontrollable," Odin said. "So, we must stop her from returning to Asgard?" Thor asked. "This is a question you and Loki need to consider," Odin said with emotion. "She is my daughter, your sister. At the same time, she could also be the enemy that destroys Asgard." Odin's tone was distant, tinged with nostalgia. As a father, imprisoning his daughter for thousands of years was not his wish. But as the king of Asgard, Hela had slaughtered the Valkyries who came to stop her. Odin had to give his Asgardian subjects an explanation. "All right, enough of this. I must go." "Father, is it really necessary to go? The threads of fate are unpredictable, I must seek them myself. This is my duty, my mission." Odin pulled the 2 brothers into his arms, his voice deep and meaningful. "Asgard is entrusted to you. And Frigga, your mother, take good care of her from me." After bidding farewell to Thor and Loki, Odin waved them away. On another battlefield, Thor, after a moment of distraction, suddenly attacks Surtur like a madman. He leaped into the clouds. Thunder rumbled and lightning crackled across the sky. Thor, acting as a catalyst, unleashed a massive bolt of lightning, like a dragon. The raging thunder dragon ripped through the heavens, illuminating the world as if it were daytime. But compared to this thunder dragon, Surtur felt the sky darken, as if only this single, dazzling bolt of lightning existed in the world. Surtur sensed danger, a danger to his very life. He was enraged, and the eternal fire on his crown burned even more fiercely. The flame spread throughout his body, climbing up the twilight sword in his hand. The next instant, the heavenly lightning struck, stirring the earth's fire, and Mjolnir clashed with the twilight sword. Surtur felt an immense force emanating from the twilight sword, a force far exceeding anything Thor had ever felt before. Within Thor, a power not previously his own appeared out of thin air, surging and churning. This was the power of Odin. Or rather, the power of Thor. The power passed down through generations of Asgardian gods. Empowered by this power, the heavenly lightning overwhelmed the earth's fire, and Mjolnir deflected the twilight sword. 100-foot-tall thunder dragon, baring its fangs and roaring, lunged at Surtur's crown. Surtur knew that if struck by this dragon and stripped of the eternal flame, he would surely die. The dragon struck Surtur, unleashing a blinding white light that illuminated the heavens and earth. Everyone's attention, both inside and outside the battlefield, was drawn to the scene, but the blinding light obscured what was happening. When the light faded, They finally saw the 1,000-foot-tall, towering fire giant Surtur fall, and were stunned. Rumble. Only then did the thunder rumble, jolting everyone awake. Father has lost. Queen Cinder, witnessing this, was shaken and unable to believe it. She staggered towards the direction where Surtur had fallen. No, that's not right. The flames haven't gone out, the eternal flame is still there, Surtur hasn't lost, the Angel Queen called to Queen Cinder, wanting to deal with Loki first. At this moment, an ominous premonition welled up in her heart. Could this battle be lost? The Angel Queen's words made sense, but Queen Zund ignored them, still single-mindedly flying towards the direction where Surtur had fallen. Are you looking down on me? Odin's brat, why didn't you kill me? Surtur's voice boomed. If the Thunder Dragon had hit his head, he would have been dead for sure. Moreover, he was powerless to resist. But Thor suddenly changed the direction of the Thunder Dragon's attack, grazing his head and striking his shoulder. Although this also severely injured him, it wasn't fatal. Compared to Laufey, he was much tougher. He had recovered by now, but he still lay flat, unwilling to stand up. The blood of the 9 realms has been shed enough. Thor picked up Mjolnir, turned his back to Surtur, and walked towards the Angel Queen. Remember, you're out. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.